Chapter 1563. It was already past midnight. The entire Chiu residence had fallen into silence. Only the patrolling servants were still yawning on their night shift. At this moment, a loud bang rang out. The door was violently smashed open, startling the night watchman. "Who are you? Who allowed you to trespass into my private residence?" "Guards, there are villains here." The watchman was a middle-aged man with a protruding mouth and monkey cheeks. His eyes were dark, sunken, and swollen. He did not look energetic at all. When the centurion sent his men to rush into the Chiu residence, he tried to stop them but was unexpectedly kicked away by the centurion. The centurion said, "Remember, no one in the Chiu residence is allowed to escape. If one escapes, you will bear the consequences." This was a death order from above. They had to take it seriously. No matter how the watchman called for help, they rushed into the residence. The watchman's call for help was effective. The patrolling servants heard the commotion and ran over to check on the situation, but they were captured and detained. The soldiers' violent enforcement of the law made a lot of noise. Several people who were sound asleep were startled awake. Although old Master Chiu was old, he did not change his fondness for beauties. He always wanted a wife to warm his bed. She looked to be about 17 or 18 years old. When she heard the noise outside, she immediately shook the disheveled old man beside her to wake him up, but he scolded her instead. "What do you want to do in the middle of the night, not letting anyone sleep?" Old Master Chiu was very angry in bed. If he was in a bad mood, he would whip someone to death. Thus, no one dared to disturb him. This new lady didn't know the rules. She was scared, but at the same time, she showed a timid and fearful expression. She was very nervous. Reporting to Old Master, "There seems to be an intruder outside," Old Master Chiu rose angrily and hurriedly grabbed his outer robe to drape it over his shoulders. When he got up, he kicked the woman in the chest. Although this Old Master Chiu was very old, the strength of his kick was not weak. The woman almost fainted. Useless. As soon as he opened the door, several soldiers dressed in neat leather armor blocked the door and looked like they were going to arrest him. Old Master Chiu had never seen such a scene. He was so scared that his limbs turned cold. At the same time, an unknown anger rose in him. "Who are you? This place is under the rule of the Lanting Duke. You bandits are committing crimes here. Are you tired of living?" Hearing this, the soldiers looked at each other and could not help but mock. "What the hell? Capture him. Don't let this old man escape." Not only was Old Master Chiu in the room, but there was also a beautiful lady as pretty as a flower. When everyone caught sight of the disheveled old man's attire and the young lady's appearance, they could not help but scoff. He was already so old, yet he was still lustful and defiled a woman who was old enough to be his granddaughter. He was really shameless. Old Master Chiu's hands were twisted behind his back. He was in so much pain that the veins on his forehead were bulging. He shouted loudly, but it was nothing more than a warning and a threat. He was using Jianghu's name to intimidate others. The soldiers' ears hurt from listening to them. A clever soldier looked around and saw a pair of blue underwear lying beside Old Master Chiu's bed. He grabbed it, crumpled it into a ball, and stuffed it into Old Master Chiu's mouth. "You've finally shut up. You've almost made me deaf." Seeing the situation, the lady who was captured could not care less about crying. Instead, she revealed an indescribable expression. When Old Master Chiu was young, he did not control himself and contracted a minor illness that was difficult to talk about. As a result, he could not control his urine and feces in his sleep when he was old. That pair of cyan underwear was taken off after being soaked in urine. She was bought to accompany Old Master Chiu. Not only was she to warm his bed and let him take advantage of her, but her other task was to help him change his dirty underwear to prevent him from flying into a rage when he woke up the next day. At that moment, someone actually stuffed it into his mouth. This was really, TSK. Apart from Old Master Chiu being captured, Old Master Chiu's son, Chiu Meng, was no better. Old Master Chiu loved beauties, and Chiu Meng was no exception. He could not be away from women for even a day. Chiu Meng felt that he had made a great contribution to Yang Tao. In the future, he would have an easy time becoming an official. In his excitement, he was in high spirits and fooled around with his concubine for half the night. When the soldiers barged in, he had just fallen asleep out of exhaustion. He was a light sleeper and was woken up in no time. "What's the ruckus outside?" He nudged his concubine and asked her to get up and go outside to take a look. He went back to sleep. His concubine did as she was told. Unsurprisingly, she was startled by the soldiers who had barged in and let out a high-pitched scream. Chiu Meng was woken up by her. He grabbed something and threw it on the ground. "It's the middle of the night. Do you want to die?" Soon, Chiu Meng heard loud and heavy footsteps approaching him. "Who are you?" Chiu Meng was not Old Master Chiu, who did not step out of his house and only cared about his health. He immediately recognized the identity of the soldiers. "We are arresting you. Do not resist. Otherwise, we will kill you on the spot. Please cooperate and do not make things difficult for us." His words were polite, but his actions were not polite at all. Chiu Meng was still in a daze when he was tied up and dragged out. "Why are you arresting me?" The soldier said, "We are also following orders." "Orders?" Chiu Meng's face turned pale. He quickly thought of the key point and his legs turned into noodles. Could it be? Chiu Meng swallowed nervously. Could it be that his secret actions with Yang Tao had been discovered? If that was the case, wouldn't his life be in danger? Chiu Meng thought of the exterminated Zhao clan and his legs turned even weaker. If not for the soldiers dragging him, he would have fallen. These soldiers were indeed honest. They said that not a single person could escape. They even tied the wings of the 2 old hens raised in the kitchen and dragged them out. The centurion couldn't help but facepalm. Were the soldiers under him really not retarded? Put these people in prison and wait for the general and the counselor to come back for interrogation. Chiu Meng didn't believe it. He shouted, "You have no evidence. Why are you accusing people?" The centurion's left hand pressed on the hilt of his saber. His eyes were sharp and murderous, making Chiu Meng's heart tremble. Unexpectedly, the centurion was a cultured man. He said in a genteel manner, "If you don't want people to know, then don't do it. You should reflect on yourself." Chiu Meng paled in fright. Old Master Chiu had also guessed it. He was so frightened that he wet his pants. The soldier sneered, "What a pair of promising father and son." Everyone in the Chiu residence was locked in the prison. The originally empty cell was immediately filled with people, and there was even noisy background music. Chiu Meng and Old Master Chiu were locked together. Could it be that there was a leak somewhere? Chiu Meng tried to calm his wildly beating heart. He didn't know whether to comfort the old master or himself. "Father, don't panic. Once Yang Tao wins, they can't do anything to us." Old Master Chiu looked haggard and miserable, but he could only trust his youngest son. Chapter 1564. "Bah, you're still lucky when you're at death's door." The jailer who was guarding Chiu Meng and his brother heard the conversation and cursed in a low voice with a look of disdain on his face. Everyone in Jianghu's camp knew that their lord rarely threw people into prison, let alone arrested an entire family. Once she did that, it meant that the people she arrested had committed an unforgivable crime and were destined to walk out of prison alive. The older jailer glared at him. "Shut up. These people are still suspects before the general and the military counselor interrogate them." The third jailer didn't know the details and asked curiously, "What did they do to get locked up?" "Who knows what they did? The last one who was sent here was a traitor from the Zhao family. These people are the same as the Zhao family." The first jailer smiled maliciously and said in a low voice, "Maybe they're the same." Jailers often dealt with all kinds of crimes. Squatting in the dark, damp, and cold dungeon to guard the prisoners all day long, even a mentally healthy person would become mentally unhealthy after a long time. In order to relieve the pressure, many jailers developed a gossipy personality. If that's the case, won't all of them, he made a gesture of cutting his throat with his hand. The meaning was obvious. If they really are traitors, we won't kill them to frighten them. Are we going to treat them well and keep them alive until the new year? The prisoners' cries and pleas for mercy successfully drowned out the conversation of the jailers. The Chiu family didn't hear it. They were comforting themselves that Yang Tao would win. As long as Yang Tao defeated Fu Wang's army, they would be the heroes of the war. What they didn't know was that Yang Tao's army was also on the verge of collapse. First was Yan Lin's side. Although Yang Si was Fengzhen's bait, it wasn't that easy to bite. All the warships were painted black, which made them invisible in the dark. It was as if they were in stealth mode and could sneak up on the enemy. Yan Lin and the others lost the initiative. By the time they realized what was going on, Yang Si had already finished his set of moves. The vanguard warships were robbed, hit, and burned. As soon as the battle started, they were overwhelmed by Yang Si's army. Even though Yan Lin managed to stabilize the situation as fast as he could, the fog around them was their biggest obstacle. It was hard to tell the enemy from their own side. Even though they had the same bugle or battle drum, their ships were still crowded together. They kept bumping into each other, and they kept bumping into each other. Yang Si's side was at an advantage. Because they were connected by hemp ropes, the distance between the warships could be roughly determined by the tightness of the hemp ropes. Even though their mobility was not as agile as individual combat, they would not make mistakes like fighting against each other. Under the fire, several enemy warships were burned. The flames shot into the sky like a dazzling flower on the river. Of the river. The firelight penetrated the thick fog and dyed it orange, as if it were a lighthouse illuminating the ships in the fog. Yang Si said with a smile, "This battle was really satisfying. All the anger that I've been suppressing in the past few days has dissipated." Yang Si wasn't the only one who thought this way. Fengzhen, who had been the scapegoat for the defeat in the last battle, had a clearer understanding of the situation. Fengzhen was the one who lost the last battle. He had a better understanding. Did they really think that Yang Tao and the others guessed that Jingyang had a granary because the enemy was too smart? No, this was all part of Fengzhen's plan. The granary in Jingyang was also a bait that he had purposely used to attract the enemy. When the enemy took the bait, how could they let them go? Of course, they had to kill all of them at once. The enemy generals understood this too. There was no way they could break out of the encirclement because of the disparity in strength. They could only prepare themselves for a life-and-death struggle. Even if they had to die here, they would drag a few more souls down with them. The raging fire engulfed the entire Jingyang granary. The night sky, which had been dyed orange-red by the smoke, looked like colorful ink blooming in a painting. Stubborn resistance, Fengzhen looked coldly at the movements in the Jingyang granary. The enemy was obviously planning to perish together with them. He wasn't a kind person. Since the enemy wanted to die, he would grant them their wish. They wouldn't be able to leave. I wonder how General Fu is doing. Seeing that the enemy couldn't do anything, Fengzhen finally had time to worry about the situation on the main battlefield. If Fu Wang won, Yang Tao wouldn't be able to defend Jianghu. He would have to retreat from Dongqing with his remaining soldiers. Then, the whole of Dongqing would be in his lord's hands. If Fu Wang lost, Yang Tao would also be greatly weakened. If he could capture Yang Tao in one go, that would be even better. Fengzhen was dreaming, but reality didn't always go according to one's wishes. Fu Wang led his soldiers to land. Behind him, the archers on the warships helped to clear the enemy. They quickly gained a foothold. Without hesitation, Fu Wang ordered an attack. The soldiers on one side were aggressive and full of fighting spirit. The morale of the other side was declining. They gradually distanced themselves from each other. With the help of the southeast wind, the fire spread quickly. Smoke rose. Under the violent destruction of Qi Kuang's navy, Ong Tao's water stockade quickly crumbled like dried twigs. The fire spread, burning the air and turning the sky red like it was daytime. Yang Tao killed a few people in a row. His expression was so serious that water could drip from it. He was extremely regretful. He also knew that regardless of whether the information sent by the Chiu family was true or not, everything was within the enemy's calculations. They had fallen into a trap. In order to intercept the food, Yang Tao let Yan Lin and the old general take away many soldiers. The remaining people couldn't resist the ferocious enemies. Qian Su found his lord in the chaos and said hurriedly, "Lord, please retreat immediately." Yang Tao gritted his teeth, his cheeks trembling faintly. "How can we retreat at this time?" As soon as he finished speaking, a few more enemies came out of nowhere. Yang Tao swiftly cut off their heads. Yang Tao said stubbornly, "You don't have to persuade me. I know what to do." As the Lord, Yang Tao had a team of elite guards by his side to protect him. However, he saw that the situation at the front was critical and sent them away. Qian Su said, "My lord's safety is the most important. Even if you don't think about yourself, you have to think about Mistress and the young master." Yang Tao said, "I've already sent people to find Mistress and send her to Nanxing. We can plan later, but we can't lose this place for now." He wasn't a blockhead, but he really couldn't leave so many soldiers to die and become a coward. Even if he had to retreat, he had to lead the surviving soldiers to block the enemy's attack and retreat while fighting. "I'm not afraid of death." Chapter 1565. Be careful, counselor. The enemy's attack was too fierce. As time went by, the fog on the river became thicker and thicker. This was one disaster after another for Yan Lin. An arrow came out of nowhere. As soon as the guard opened his mouth, Yan Lin swung his sword and shot the arrow down without looking back. "Counselor, the enemy is too strong. We can't pinpoint their exact location. I'm afraid." "I'm afraid we can't stop them," Yan Lin said. "If we can't stop them, give the order to retreat. Order the badly damaged warships to hold them off." But if we retreat and we lose, how will we explain to our lord?" "I'll take responsibility. You don't have to worry about it." Yan Lin said coldly to the general, "The enemy came prepared. If we can't beat them, why don't we retreat? Are we going to regret it after we lose the lives of our soldiers? Give the order to retreat and return to the camp immediately." Even though Yan Lin had told Yang Tao to be careful of the enemy's sneak attack, the sneak attack that Yan Lin mentioned and the actual attack were not on the same level. According to Yan Lin's prediction, there weren't many enemies attacking the camp, and most of them were injured soldiers. They weren't a threat at all. But now, they had fallen into the enemy's trap. The enemy had sent many elite soldiers to attack the water stockade. They had enough supplies and supplies. Their lord might not be able to hold the fort. Yan Lin knew Yang Tao too well. Yang Tao was like Yang Jian. He seemed warm and generous, but he was actually stubborn. If they didn't send reinforcements, Yan Lin was worried that Yang Tao would lead his men to fight to the death. It would be a great loss if they lost their lives for nothing. "What? Our lord also has enemies," Yan Lin said coldly. "What else? Fengzhen used the Chiu family to mislead us. Didn't he plan for so long just for this opportunity?" Fengzhen and the others knew that the Chiu family was up to no good, but they still held back their anger and waited until today to make their move. However, Fengzhen and the others' efforts paid off. Nearly half of Yan Lin's warships were destroyed. Many of the sailors were injured or killed. The corpses on the river could form a small island. "Go back now. Don't delay," Yan Lin said and closed his eyes. He seemed calm, but there was panic and worry hidden underneath. He was afraid that he wouldn't make it back in time. He decisively abandoned the broken battleship and used it to block the enemy's battleship, which bought him time to retreat. Because of the thick fog, visibility was very low. Yang Si also discovered that the enemy's firepower was not right as they were fighting. Only then did he realize that they had escaped. Yang Si snorted and clicked his tongue. Who's the one commanding the troops? How could he just leave without saying a word? Lao General smiled bitterly and pressed his hand against the wound on his arm. During the chaotic battle, he was careless and was shot in the arm by an enemy arrow. Although he lost a lot of blood, his life was not in danger. If they're going to retreat and run for their lives, why would they send someone to inform the military counselor? Why didn't you tell me? Yang Si said plausibly. Do you know who escaped? Si Jiang was stunned for a moment before he asked, who? Yang Si said with an expression that said, it's all military exploits. The military merits that belong to me escaped, and I'm not allowed to ask about it. The deputy general, he didn't know whether he should feel sorry for the enemy who had been turned into military merits, or be impressed by the shamelessness and invincible logic of his military counselor. He asked shakily, what should we do now, military counselor? Yang Si said, what should we do? Go after them. Can you bear it when a cooked duck flies in front of your eyes? Lao General shook his head. No. They went after them immediately. Unfortunately, there was a gap called dimension between ideals and reality. Ideals were great, but reality was too cruel. Counselor, the wreckage of the enemy's battleships and ours are all over the river. It's a serious hindrance to our army. Yang Si said, clear those wreckages. Quickly. The deputy general said again, then should we cut the ropes connecting the two ships as well? If they didn't cut them, even if the wreckages were cleared, the battleships that were connected in a V shape wouldn't be able to pass together. Yang Si said, it's untied. Let's catch up with them first. Although Yang Si and the others moved very fast, they still couldn't catch up with the tail of Yan Lin's army. They were not as familiar with the water as Yan Lin's navy was. The fog was still thick, which would affect the ship's ability to tell the direction. Moreover, Yan Lin and the others were retreating along the river. They had to open the sails, so they couldn't go too fast. It would be strange if Yang Si and the others could catch up. Seeing the cooked duck fly away and the military merits that were in his grasp disappear, Yang Si slapped his thigh and sighed with regret. He had hoped to ask the Lord for more rewards this time. He didn't expect that he would fail at the last moment. Could it be that he really had to live off a woman and wait for Jiang Shaowei to support the family and feed the children? Yang Si's regret was not over yet. When he heard that the commander of the enemy was Yan Lin, his eyes almost popped out. Did he really manage to catch the big fish, Yan Lin, with his meager effort? What a pity. The big fish was here, but he couldn't catch him. What a loss. Yang Si's resentment was almost materialized, but Yan Lin was determined to return. The closer he got, the clearer the flames became. He didn't lead his men to fight Fu Wang's army head-on. Instead, he chose to go ashore from another shore. It was obvious that Yang Tao's men were about to die. The riverbank was filled with corpses. Most of them were Yang Tao's men, and the rest were the enemy's. Yan Lin put the torch near the river and saw that the water had been dyed red with blood. His heart sank. Take some men to look for the Lord. If you see the enemy, warn them. Remember to stay alive. Don't force yourself. Yan Lin and the others were in luck. They ran into many defeated soldiers along the way. After a few questions, he found out Yang Tao's whereabouts from them. Yan Lin made a prompt decision. He took more than half of his men to support Yang Tao, and the rest of them drove the warship to the designated location. After today, Jianghu would be lost. Yan Lin had to plan a way out for Yang Tao so that he wouldn't fall into the enemy's hands. If he could escort Yang Tao to the warship and leave for Nanxing, there would be a chance for him to rise again in the future. Yan Lin's plan was good, but it depended on whether his enemy would give him the chance. This enemy was not only Jiang Pengji, but also Anshui, who occupied most of Nanxing's land. Yan Lin and his men fought off a few scattered waves of enemies. After some effort, they finally found Yang Tao, who was retreating to the south. Greetings, my lord. By the time they found Yang Tao, Yan Lin's sword was full of blood. His armor was no longer shiny and clean. He was covered in blood. Xiaoyang. Seeing Yan Lin, Yang Tao relaxed a little. He helped him up and said, I'm glad you're okay. Let's not talk about anything else. Yan Lin said, I didn't see through the enemy's evil plan, which put the Lord in danger and the soldiers in danger. Yang Tao interrupted him. You have nothing to do with this. I can only blame myself for trusting a villain. Yan Lin had been training his troops outside. Yang Tao was the one who made the decisions for the Chiu family. He couldn't be blamed. Chapter 1566. Xiaoyang, about this. Yang Tao tried to say something, but Yan Lin didn't give him a chance. He tried to force Yang Tao to agree with him. Yang Tao looked at his childhood friend, who was kneeling on the ground and begging him. Everything he wanted to say was stuck in his throat. All right, I agree. Qian Su could only sigh. Only Yan Lin could control his master. Of course, only his lord, Yang Tao, could tolerate Yan Lin's occasional overbearing attitude. If Yan Lin had been a petty lord, he would have been offended by Yan Lin's forceful actions. After a while, Yang Tao said, I've sent people to escort my wife and sister away. Don't worry, Xiaoyang. One was his sister, and the other was his wife's first wife. They were the two most important women in Yan Lin's life. Nothing could happen to them. Yan Lin said, Your Highness is thoughtful. I thank you on behalf of my wife. Yang Tao didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Yan Lin didn't need to thank him. Even if he didn't say anything, Yang Tao would still protect them. Yan Lin continued, We can't stay here for long. We don't know when the enemy will catch up. Please leave first, my lord. Yang Tao left the water stockade with the rest of his troops. He knew the terrain well enough to shake off the enemy, but it wasn't a long-term plan. The fog on the river was still there. Yan Lin planned to let Yang Tao board the boat and escape under the cover of the fog. If they waited until dawn, the enemy would catch up with them. It was too dangerous. Yang Tao nodded. He took 2 steps forward and was about to get on the horse. Suddenly, he remembered something else. Xiaoyang, you're not leaving? Yan Lin said naturally, The enemy is coming fiercely. I'll delay them for a while and leave when my lord is safe. That won't do. Yang Tao refused immediately. What if something happens to you? How can I explain it to my wife? Yang Tao's wife was Yan Lin's sister. How could Yan Lin stay and delay the enemy for him? Did Xiaoyang know what would happen to him if he stayed? Yan Lin said calmly, My lord, I won't have to worry about anything if you leave first. If you stay, instead, he didn't mention that Yang Tao would make enemies by staying. Not only would he not be able to help, but he would also arouse the enemy's fighting spirit. What fighting spirit? Killing the leader of the enemy's feudal vassals would not only leave a good name in the annals of history, but the rewards would also benefit him for a lifetime. Yang Tao was speechless. His eyes turned red. Obviously, he didn't agree to Yan Lin's suggestion. Don't worry, Your Highness. I will protect myself and catch up with Your Highness as soon as possible. After that, Yan Lin turned to Qian Su and said, I'll have to trouble you to keep an eye on Master Gu later. If there are any enemies chasing after you, remember one thing, don't get caught up in a fight. Run if you can. As long as he escaped into Yang Tao's territory in Nanxing, he would basically be safe. He could not be greedy for a moment of merit and forget about the important matters. Qian Su nodded to show that she remembered and immediately mounted the horse. Yang Tao did not have a choice even if he did not want to leave. Yan Lin left most of the wounded soldiers behind, while Yang Tao took the rest of the elite soldiers with him. It's my fault for underestimating you. To think that I would suffer such a crushing defeat. Yan Lin sighed with emotion. He sent some of his soldiers as bait to confuse the enemy and mislead them. Fu Wang and the others did not know much about the terrain of Jianghu. They did not know that Yang Tao and the others would escape through the river mouth. What Yan Lin needed to do was to buy as much time as possible. It would be best if he could escape unscathed. If not, he had to at least ensure the safety of his master. Thinking of this, Yan Lin's head hurt even more. Perhaps it was because he was used to being a nanny for more than 20 years. He subconsciously worried about Yang Tao. He was worried that no one would be able to persuade Yang Tao after he passed away. Sigh, maybe this is the best for him. When Yang Jian was alive, Yang Tao was well protected. After Yang Jian died, Yan Lin had to take on the responsibility of a father. Yan Lin had to be a father and a mother at the same time. Although he had protected Yang Tao's temperament, his temperament was not suitable for chaotic times. Strangely, his current mood was somewhat similar to Niel Yang's before he died. Both of them were worried about their naughty child. Nie Qing was too kind, while Yang Tao was too sincere and passionate. Yan Lin took out a handkerchief and wiped the blood off his sword. Then, he put the plain handkerchief back into his sleeve. Report. We found traces of the enemy. Yan Lin asked, how many of them? The soldier answered, about 1,000 of them. 1,000 of them? That was more than enough. They were probably sent by Fu Wang to look for the remaining soldiers. Listen to my command. Get into formation. Even if we have to die, we can't let the enemy win so easily. Yan Lin swore that he had killed more people in his previous life than he had tonight. A rough calculation showed that he had killed more than 100 people. This was a good result for a counselor who worked as a civil servant for many years. Even if he went to hell, he would have 100 people to die with him. It was not a big loss. Because of Yan Lin's interference, not only did Fu Wang fail to find Yang Tao, but he was also misled into going in the opposite direction. When the soldier learned from the remaining soldiers that Yang Tao and the others had gone in the opposite direction, his face was as colorful as a palette that had been knocked over. At this time, the sky was turning gray. The fog on the river had mostly dissipated. Yang Si and the others were the first to arrive. They wanted to congratulate Fu Wang, but they did not expect him to look angry. General Fu, what's going on? Fu Wang was hot-tempered when he was angry. He loosened his collar and said, we were tricked. Yang Tao escaped. The cooked duck had flown away, and the military merits that had been handed to them were gone. Hearing this, Yang Si did not stay silent. Instead, he smiled and spread out his hands. What a coincidence. I let Yan Lin escape too. Were they born in the year of the rabbit? Fu Wang said angrily, come on. Have you ever seen a rabbit that can run on the river? How could he still be in the mood to talk at a time like this? Yang Si was born with a sarcastic face. No matter how nice the words came out of his mouth, they always sounded sarcastic. If Fu Wang did not know this man's temperament, he might have been angry. Seeing that Fu Wang was really angry, Yang Si did not have the guts to test the waters. Instead, he summoned Fu Wang's deputy general and asked him what was going on. This deputy general was brought by Fu Wang when he surrendered. He was honest and loyal, so Yang Si was not worried that he would lie. The deputy general told him all the details, and Yang Si listened attentively. After a while, Yang Si punched his palm and laughed. You're lucky. Someone slipped through the net. Someone slipped through the net? Who slipped through the net? Fu Wang asked. Yang Si said, Yan Xiaoyang, I suspect that the person who led the soldiers to trick you and mislead you here is Yan Lin. Fu Wang frowned in confusion. Why are you so sure? Maybe there is someone else. Chapter 1567. Really? Fu Wang had already prepared himself to return empty-handed, but he had not expected Yan Lin to slip through the net. Although Yang Si was usually not very reliable, he was still very serious when it came to business. He would not lie to him about this. Why would I lie to you? I heard that Yang Tao and Yan Lin have always been inseparable. If we capture Yan Lin, we might be able to use him to threaten Yang Tao. Even though the methods used to threaten others were rather despicable, there was no such thing as morality when it came to war. As long as they could win, it would be fine. Who would want to pretend to be a gentleman? In addition, Yang Tao lost more than 100,000 soldiers in this battle. Aside from a few who were temporarily recruited, most of them were brought from Nansheng. If Yan Lin is captured, there will be no one to help Yang Tao. Sooner or later, he will be in big trouble. Fu Wang could understand the first part of the sentence, but he was confused by the latter part. Why did Yang Si sound like Yang Tao was not a good person? Fu Wang asked directly, from what you said, you don't have a high opinion of Yang Tao. His lord had a high opinion of Yang Tao. How could Yang Jingrong have such high standards? When did I say that? Yang Si shook his head and said, Yang Tao became one of the feudal lords in troubled times. That alone is better than countless people. I said that because Yang Tao is not a man of wealth and power. He is straightforward and straightforward. He is the kind of person who can't be bothered with anything. Why didn't General Fu think about it? Yang Tao is from Dongqing. The aristocrats of Nanxing were willing to support him because Yang Tao was profitable. Now that Yang Tao had lost the war, his foundation was in danger. Without Yan Lin's help, it was only a matter of time before Yang Tao fell out with his previous aristocratic family, given his straightforward character. Maybe we don't have to do anything. Yang Tao will. Yang Si winked at Fu Wang and raised his hand to cut off his head. Fu Wang was not optimistic about this speculation. No matter how straightforward Yang Tao was, he was not stupid. There was no way he would put himself in that situation. The most important thing now is to capture Yan Lin. Yang Tao is gone. Yan Xiaoyang can't escape again. Although Fu Wang was not as enthusiastic about building a career as Yang Si, he was also a man who had to support his family. Generals were not like scholars. Scholars could make a living in times of peace and chaos. Martial artists could only make money during times of war. In times of peace, there were not many opportunities. Yang Si said, I think so too. Even though he knew that Yang Tao would not be able to catch up, Fu Wang still sent people to chase after him. It would be best if he could catch up with them, but if he couldn't, he would also be able to give an explanation to his lord so that he wouldn't be criticized for slacking off. Fu Wang and his companion focused on capturing Yan Lin. Compared to capturing Yang Tao, capturing Yan Lin was more realistic. Even though Yan Lin had some wounded soldiers, they were all wounded and didn't have much food with them. They wouldn't last long. All Fu Wang had to do was to send people to block the shore, keep an eye on the direction of the boats, and block off Yan Lin's escape route. Sooner or later, he would be caught. This way, there's no way Yan Xiaoyang can escape. Fu Wang was full of confidence. Beside him, Yang Si looked on with a smile and did not comment. He was afraid that he would be beaten if he said anything. Yang Si had a feeling that Fu Wang would be slapped in the face. It turned out that a counselor's intuition was stronger and more accurate than a woman's sixth sense. Fu Wang had cast a wide net, but he still couldn't catch Yan Lin. Bastard, if we catch him, we'll break his legs. Let's see how he's going to escape. Fu Wang was extremely busy. Not only did he have to deal with the aftermath of the war, but he also had to appease the local people. He also had to politely reject the local forces that came to him to express their goodwill. He didn't want them to waste his time. After so many twists and turns, a day had passed. The soldiers he sent out had not stopped Yan Lin's army. Instead, Yan Lin had escaped deep into the mountains. Fu Wang was so angry that he wanted to set fire to the mountains to smoke them out. Don't. Didn't my lord say that if you set fire to the mountains, you'll spend the rest of your life in prison? Yang Si had a frivolous smile on his face, which made Fu Wang's hands itch. He wished he could make intimate contact with Yang Si's face with his palm. Fu Wang said, Pfft. When did my lord say such nonsense? Yang Si said, many years ago, when we were drinking in the brothel. If you don't believe me, I can write to her and ask her. Fu Wang was speechless. He thought that Feng Langzi was the only one who would bring his lord to a brothel. He didn't expect that Yang Si was also a Cancer. Seeing that Fu Wang was about to get angry, Yang Si quickly changed the topic. He comforted him, the weather is dry now. If you really set fire to the mountains, it won't just affect this area. I heard that there are many villages and terraced fields in the mountains. If General Fu sets fire to the mountains, many innocent people will be affected. If my lord finds out, General Fu will be scolded. Fu Wang rolled his eyes. He only said that because he was angry. Why would he really set fire to the mountains? Then, what should we do now? Fu Wang asked, are we just going to watch them jump up and down? Yang Si said, send people to continue chasing after them. Block all the exits so that Yan Lin can't save himself. We can also exhaust them to death. Fu Wang sighed and chose to listen to Yang Si's Buddhist advice. Just as Yang Si said, the biggest problem for Yan Lin and the others was food. They only had enough food for one day. After that, they would have to kill horses to fill their stomachs. They also had to climb mountains and cross rivers, which was more exhausting than usual. At this rate, they wouldn't last more than a few days. However, that was not the worst news. The enemy had obviously seen through Yan Lin's plan. They had arranged a large number of soldiers everywhere. Yan Lin couldn't break out of the encirclement with his current manpower. If they took the land route, all the passes would be heavily guarded. If they took the water route, all the ports would be guarded too. There was no way to borrow a boat. It seemed like a dead end, but Yan Lin didn't give up, let alone admit defeat. I know the situation. It's good that my lord is safe and sound. As soon as Yan Lin finished speaking, he felt a sharp pain from the wound on his left shoulder. He frowned in discomfort. The wound was caused by a stray arrow when he was being chased by the enemy. It wasn't a serious injury normally, but there were no medics, no medicine, not even water to clean the wound. He could only bandage it hastily to stop the bleeding. The weather was hot, and Yan Lin's armor was heavy. The edge of the wound began to itch and turn red. It looked like it was going to fester. However, Yan Lin couldn't care less. He forced himself to lead hundreds of soldiers deep into the mountains to find their destination. If there were no boats, they would make their own. The bamboo here was perfect for making bamboo rafts. With bamboo rafts, they didn't need to go to the shore. They could leave by water in the dark. Even though it was a risky move, it was better than waiting for death. There was strength in numbers. They managed to survive for 3 to 4 days by killing horses, digging weeds, and hunting beasts in the mountains. They had to be careful in case the enemy found them. When the bamboo rafts were ready, Yan Lin asked the rest of the soldiers if they wanted to stay. Those who didn't want to leave were dismissed. Even though Yan Lin had a high reputation in the army, the soldiers were just ordinary people. They had lost their morale after days of wandering. There was no internal strife because the soldiers were still alive. Chapter 1568. In the end, less than half of them were willing to stay. They were worried that Yan Lin was testing their loyalty. If they said they wanted to leave, they would be killed to keep their mouths shut. If they didn't have this worry, it would be great if only a third of them could stay. Yan Lin didn't say anything. He took off his valuables and handed them to a centurion. He asked him to exchange them for silver as food for the soldiers. The centurion trembled as he took the jade pendant, jade flute, and some gold from Yan Lin. Tears rolled down his cheeks. They bowed to Yan Lin and said their blessings, choking with sobs. Yan Lin heaved a long sigh. He ordered his men to push the bamboo raft into the water. It was getting dark. It was the best time to escape. However, the escape was not so smooth. The first problem they encountered was Yan Lin's illness. His festering wounds gave off a foul smell, and his body was burning. In order to escape, Yan Lin hadn't rested for the past few days. He didn't care about his health. The day before yesterday, he had a low fever. After such a long time, his wounds were getting worse. The soldiers couldn't do anything but worry. The wounds were too big, and they didn't have the right medicine. It was hot and humid in the mountains. He hadn't rested for days. All these conditions were terrible. It was no surprise that he was sick. The temperature on the river was low at night. The change in temperature worsened Yan Lin's condition. The soldier on the same raft raised his hand to touch Yan Lin's forehead. The moment he touched it, he was shocked by the temperature. "It's okay." Yan Lin looked a little distracted, but he forced himself to say, "Follow the plan. Don't waste time." He dismissed the soldiers who didn't want to leave with him. They would be caught by Fu Wang's troops after they left the mountain. They would be able to find out where Yan Lin and the others were after a little interrogation. How could the raft be faster than a warship? If they didn't hurry, they wouldn't be able to escape. In fact, Yan Lin could have prevented this from happening. He could have killed all the soldiers who tried to leave, just as the soldiers feared. He didn't do that, not because he was too soft-hearted, but because it was unnecessary. The remaining soldiers had little morale left. If he killed more soldiers, the hundreds of them would be in chaos. "Counselor, your forehead is very hot. If it keeps burning, won't it?" Yu Jiang silently swallowed the words he wanted to say. If they didn't do anything about it, Yan Lin would either become an idiot or die. Of course, it could also turn into pneumonia, but there was no such saying in this era. The deputy general didn't respond to him, because Yan Lin couldn't stand the protests of his body and passed out. Even in his coma, he could feel himself being in a furnace for a while, thrown into an ice house for a while, shivering all over. Then, he felt as if his body was thrown into the deep sea and kept sinking. His surroundings were getting darker and darker. His consciousness was getting more and more blurry. The deputy general's call was more like a faint whisper from the distant sky. No matter how hard he tried to concentrate, he still couldn't hear it clearly. On the other hand, seeing that Yan Lin was getting worse, Si Jiang had to make a decision. He had the rest of the soldiers push the bamboo raft to the planned location. If they were lucky, they might be saved. A soldier said hesitantly, "If we encounter an enemy," Si Jiang gritted his teeth and said, "Then surrender. I don't think the Lord and the military counselor will blame you." They had tried their best, but fate refused to grant them their wish. If the wounded soldiers surrendered, they might be able to live. If they resisted, they would lose hundreds of lives for nothing. The soldier asked again, "What about the general?" The deputy general said, "The military counselor's injuries are serious. He has a fever all over his body. We need to go ashore and find a doctor as soon as possible." The soldier felt that something was wrong. They finally had a chance to escape. If they stayed to find a doctor, they might expose their identities. The deputy general understood this, but he also knew that if Yan Lin died, they would have to face the furious lord when they returned. Besides, it would be a shame if the military counselor died here. If the heavens had eyes, they would definitely be able to turn the situation around. Si Jiang decided to give it his all. Could the result be worse than Yan Lin's death and his own death in battle? Let's try. There's still hope. Si Jiang took Yan Lin on the raft and left the main group. The future was bleak, and the only thing that kept him going was his determination. After rowing for a long time, Si Jiang and Yan Lin finally reached the shore. There was a small fishing village in front of them. Si Jiang thought to himself, "I hope there's a doctor here, even if it's a mediocre one." Even though he knew that the possibility was not high, he believed that the heavens must have eyes. The fishing village was not big. There were only about 30 families and about 100 fishermen. Because there was no entertainment and oil was expensive, most people worked at sunrise and slept at sunset. It was already past midnight, and the fishing village was shrouded in darkness. To prevent their identities from being exposed, Si Jiang took off the raft and their armor and hid them in the reeds. Then he carried Yan Lin into the village. "Is anyone here? Is there a doctor in the village?" Si Jiang knocked on the doors of several families. Either no one answered, or he was scolded. The cowardly ones pretended to be dead. Yes, Si Jiang tried one house after another. When he reached the 7th house, which was near the edge of the village, the owner of the house opened the door. It was dark, but he could vaguely recognize the owner of the house. It was a short woman. The woman glanced at them and said grumpily, "Come in. Don't knock. The villagers might get angry and beat you to death." Si Jiang stood at the door, not daring to go in. The woman turned around and lit an oil lamp. She asked, "Why don't you come in?" The deputy general blinked and secretly clenched the dagger hidden in his sleeve. "Isn't the person on your back sick?" The woman said, "I'm a doctor." The deputy general was surprised. How did the woman know he was here for a doctor? The woman said angrily, "Are you stupid? Just now, you were knocking on every door, howling and crying. It's not like I'm deaf." The deputy general's face turned red. Fortunately, his skin was dark, or it would have been embarrassing. Thank you, doctor." Si Jiang hurried in with Yan Lin on his back. He put the patient on an old bamboo mat. The young lady did not talk nonsense. She lit up several oil lamps in a row and could barely see the patient's condition. Yan Lin had been so busy that he didn't have time to take care of himself. His hair was messy and his face was stained. It was hard to tell what he looked like. However, the woman could see that he was handsome. He must be a handsome man after washing up. This kid looks promising. Too bad he's a soldier. The deputy general said, "What's wrong with being a soldier?" The woman took off Yan Lin's shirt and pointed to the wound. "He's a soldier who hangs his head on his belt." "What's wrong with that?" The deputy general was speechless. Why did she take off the military advisor's shirt without saying anything? Chapter 1569. Seeing that Si Jiang was still standing there in a daze, the young lady said angrily, "What are you doing? Go and boil some hot water." Si Jiang had never seen such a disrespectful woman, but he still counted on the doctor to save his life, so he didn't dare to disobey. "I'll go boil the water now." "Please wait a moment, doctor." Si Jiang fumbled to boil a pot of hot water. Fortunately, there were a lot of dry firewood and withered grass near the stove, which saved him a lot of effort. After searching for a long time, he finally found a relatively clean wooden basin for cutting vegetables. He rinsed it with clean water and filled it with boiling hot water. When he came back, he was almost scared stiff and almost asked, "What are you doing?" Si Jiang couldn't help but pull out his dagger, but he didn't dare to act rashly because Yan Lin's military counselor was still in her hands. "What am I doing? I didn't do anything to him." The young lady was very calm and didn't forget to flirt. She said, "As you can see, I don't have clean gauze in my house. I saw that his clothes were made of good material, so I cut them off and soaked them in hot water to disinfect them." "Si Jiang," the young lady asked, "is the water I asked you to boil done?" Seeing that the young lady didn't want to kill him, Si Jiang put away his dagger and replied, "It's done. Bring it over when it's done. The conditions here are poor, so we can only use hot water for simple disinfection." Si Jiang didn't understand the latter part, but he understood the first part. He obediently brought the wooden basin over and put it within the young lady's reach. He muttered in a low voice, "My master has a family." The young lady had sharp ears. She said, "I didn't strip him naked." "What do you mean by looking like I've ruined his innocence?" Si Jiang didn't dare to retort. He stared at the young lady's movements without blinking. The hem of his military counselor's clothes had been cut off by the young lady, and the pieces were piled up on the side. She soaked the cut cloth in hot water several times before picking it out with chopsticks and wringing it out slightly. "There's no hydrogen peroxide or salt water in this broken place. How can we wash the wound?" The young lady tucked her hair behind her ears with her free hand and wiped the rotten flesh around the wound with a piece of cloth with the other hand. At the same time, she commanded the deputy general, "Is there still hot water in the pot? Go and cool the hot water. It can barely be used to clean the wound. Then, go and get the vinegar from the kitchen." Si Jiang was dumbfounded. Shouldn't doctors feel the pulse and prescribe medicine? One moment, he was boiling water, the next moment, he was cooling it, and the next moment, he was bringing vinegar. Si Jiang couldn't help but say, "Are you planning to wash my master and cook him in a pot, not forgetting to add vinegar to enhance the flavor?" The young lady's hand paused, and she almost poked Yan Lin's wound. She turned her head and rolled her eyes at the deputy general. I told you to go, so go. Are you the doctor or am I the doctor? The boiling water could barely be used to clean the rotting wound, and the vinegar was used to physically cool it down. If you don't understand, then shut your mouth. No one will treat you as a mute. If you want this person to live, then do as I say. Si Jiang blinked. He was actually suppressed by this person's imposing manner, so he obediently said, oh. He found a palm leaf fan and tried to fan the hot water in the pot. It took him a lot of effort to cool the remaining water. When Si Jiang returned with the cold water, he almost went crazy when he saw that the young lady had stripped his military counselor down to his underwear. What are you doing? Physically cooling it down, the young lady answered without raising her head. Why are you so surprised? Are you trying to scare me to death in the middle of the night? This person's temperature is too high. There is no medicine here to reduce fever, and his family is so poor that they can't even afford alcohol. It's good enough that they have a small jar of vinegar. Of course, I remember that the alcohol here is not very strong. I don't know if it will be as effective as this jar of vinegar. The deputy general saw that the young lady was wiping Yan Lin's chest, back, forehead, armpits, and thighs with a piece of cloth that was stained with vinegar. She looked very serious, and it didn't seem like she was taking advantage of him. Si Jiang was finally relieved. Seeing that Si Jiang had brought the cold water over, the little lady threw the rags to him and warned, do you remember what I did just now? Wipe him with the vinegar, and I'll take care of his wound. The wound on Yan Lin's shoulder was not very deep, but it was very long. It had not been treated for a few days, so the wound was badly infected. Give me your knife. The young lady reached out her hand to Si Jiang. He hesitated for a moment, then gave it to her. She brought over an oil lamp and put the blade over the fire to warm it. What are you doing? Disinfecting. I guess you don't know what disinfecting is. Your knife must have seen blood before. Who knows what's on it? The young lady said, I'm going to use it to clean up the remaining rotten flesh. The knife can't have any dirty things on it, so I'm going to use the fire to warm it. The young lady looked very young, but her hand holding the knife was very steady. Si Jiang clearly saw her raise and lower the knife to remove the rotten flesh. Soon, fresh blood flowed out of Yan Lin's wound. Even though Yan Lin was unconscious, his body was still trembling. His brows were tightly knitted, and his cracked lips were trembling. The young lady did not move. She washed the wound with cold water several times, then threaded a thin thread that had been heated in the hot water into the needle. What are you doing? Si Jiang was wiping Yan Lin's wound for the third time when he saw the young lady was about to put the needle into his wound. I'm stitching, silly boy. The young lady skillfully stitched the wound as she spoke. She said, his wound is long, so stitching it has many advantages. For example, it can quickly stop the bleeding, prevent the wound from getting infected, promote the healing of the wound, and reduce the chance of the rupture of the wound. This boy is lucky. I've checked his wound and didn't find anything like rust. Otherwise, the chances of him being contaminated by Clostridium tetani would be greatly increased. The medical standards in this place are terrible. If it's tetanus, you should prepare for his funeral as soon as possible. In just a few sentences, Si Jiang became more and more dizzy while the little lady finished stitching up the wound. Looking at the ugly wound on his shoulder that looked like a centipede, the young lady sighed with regret. I've been a doctor for so many years, and I've done hundreds of surgeries. This is the ugliest wound I've ever stitched. I'm going to fix the wound a little so that it won't leave an ugly scar. Sigh, this young man is so handsome, and his body is so good-looking. It would ruin his beauty if he got a scar like this. Si Jiang cleaned Yan Lin's wound for a while, then touched his forehead with the back of his hand. Sir doesn't seem to have a high fever anymore. Yes, that's good news, the young lady said. I'll go get some herbs and boil them for him to drink. Si Jiang nodded gratefully. Little did he know that the young lady sighed as soon as she left the room. I'm probably the poorest person in the world. He never expected that the person he saved was the host's archenemy, Yan Lin. Chapter 1570. Yan Lin was so poor that he didn't even have a single valuable item. The dream of 1,000 years event had been held for so many years, and so many lucky people had left with some souvenirs. He was the only one who would have to return empty-handed. That's right, it was him. This lucky guy was also a typical guy who wore women's clothes. Less than a quarter of an hour after he arrived, he heard someone knocking on the door of every house, begging and crying. The guy was crying so hard that he felt sorry for him, so he decided to save him. Unfortunately, he didn't have anything he wanted, so he could only do his best. It was up to Yan Lin to save his own life. Strawberry smoothie, stop crying. Why did this lucky guy get selected with less than 10 comments? Blueberry smoothie, give up. The luck in the live streaming room has nothing to do with activity. Mysterious don't save stupid. As a regular streamer, many of the IDs of the big shots looked familiar. Only this time, the lucky guy was a stranger. He had only managed to get a spot in the live streaming room for more than 10 years. He had only made 8 comments, and his ID was, medical can't save stupid. I didn't want to make so few comments. As a doctor, I'll get beaten up by my patients if I watch live streaming during work hours. He carefully identified the herbs in the room with the girl's body, and the viewers cheered him on. Judging from the situation earlier, this lucky guy should be a Western doctor, but he could identify Chinese herbs. That was amazing. Doctors had good job prospects. Many high school students asked the lucky guy if he had any recommendations. They wanted to learn medicine too. The lucky guy pouted and snorted, "You'll be struck by lightning if you try to persuade people to learn medicine." The viewers immediately applauded the lucky guy's straightforwardness. He had spoken out the thoughts of countless medical students and hospital workers. Tudu Feichio, the lucky guy is complaining. Is work not going well? The viewers liked to chat, but they were more interested in digging up gossip. There must be a story behind the lucky guy's words. Sure enough, the lucky guy said coldly, "Of course work is not going well. Guess how I got here?" In the end, it was the patient who hacked it. As a doctor who had switched from Chinese medicine to Western medicine, he had spent many years as an intern in the hospital before he became a full-time doctor and worked diligently in the hospital. He asked himself if he was worthy of himself and his patients. Despite the bad atmosphere of medical disputes, he had worked hard for so long. Even if he had not made any contributions, he had worked hard. Unfortunately, her luck was really bad. She was sent to the ICU by the pregnant woman's husband right after she finished one surgery. Sigh, there are too many idiots in the world. Learning medicine can't save them. The European emperor heaved a sigh of relief and made a smoking gesture. When I chose to study medicine, I was also full of enthusiasm. I had the heart to save the world and the people. However, brain damage is an incurable disease. I have the heart to save it, but I can't do anything about it. Giving birth to a boy or a girl has nothing to do with me. It's not like I'm king his wife up. 5 million salted fish, looking at a delicate and pretty little girl using a soft voice to say such crude words. It hurt his eyes, */omega*, working cells. I don't understand. What does this have to do with you being the chosen lucky emperor? It has something to do with it. The European emperor sighed. About half a month ago, I performed a cesarean section. The pregnant woman and the baby girl were safe. However, the pregnant woman's husband and mother-in-law were not happy about it. They made a scene at the hospital, saying that they went to Hong Kong for an ultrasound and that it was a boy. They suspected that the hospital had sold the precious boy in exchange for a girl. They were very agitated and ignored the pregnant woman and the baby. They stabbed me with a fruit knife. I was sent to the emergency room and stayed in the ICU for a few days. I was hospitalized because of a work-related injury. That's why I have the time to watch the live broadcast. Do you know that the ICU costs nearly 10,000 a day? If it weren't for my insurance, I don't know how long I would have to work for the hospital for free to recoup my losses. After saying that, the European emperor sadly wiped away non-existent tears and sighed. "It's easy." 5,000,000 salted fish quietly replied, "It's not easy. Those who hear it will be sad and those who see it will cry. Todo fecho, misfortune and good fortune depend on each other. It might not be a bad thing. Isn't it just a lucky transmigration? According to the popularity of the live broadcast, your story will be on the hot search list in minutes. Those who hurt you will be forced to give you an explanation." The European emperor was not a person who liked to be stubborn. Although he had suffered an unexpected misfortune, he would not give up his favorite job because of fear of choking. The salted fish were no longer jealous of the European emperor after hearing what happened to him. After all, this was what the European emperor deserved. This body belonged to the village's barefoot doctor. Whenever the villagers had a headache or fever, they would come to her. Therefore, there were many common herbs in the house, most of which were used to treat headaches and fever. The European emperor prescribed some medicine for Yan Lin's fever and asked the general to take it to the kitchen. The European emperor said, his wound should not be moved. Let him rest here for a while. Although the European emperor could only stay for 12 hours, this body belonged to the barefoot doctor. Minor illnesses could be treated. The general carefully brought the hot medicine to Yan Lin. He blew on it to cool it down and fed it to Yan Lin. Hearing the European emperor's suggestion, the general looked a little hesitant. The longer he stayed, the more likely his identity would be exposed. However, the military advisor's condition made it difficult for him to move. The European emperor knew who they were, so he wisely chose to keep quiet and did not ask any more questions. On the other side, Yan Lin dismissed the soldiers who were willing to leave. The soldiers exchanged the things he gave them for money and were ready to leave. However, they could not hide their whereabouts from Fu Wang's troops. They were soon caught and interrogated. Some of them refused to confess, but others were afraid of death. Faced with all kinds of torture devices in the cell, they were so scared that they almost wet their pants. "I'll tell you. I'll tell you. Don't kill me." Some of them couldn't help but confess. The others gave up to save their lives. Fu Wang then realized that Yan Lin had brought his men into the mountains to look for bamboo to make bamboo rafts to escape. The moment he got the news, he sent his troops to chase after them. In the middle of the night, they caught another group of soldiers who had escaped, but Yan Lin was not among them. Where did Yan Xiaoyang go? Fu Wang was not a good-tempered man. He chose to use violence to force them to talk. Heaven would reward those who waited. Finally, he found out the truth. Yan Lin was seriously ill, and the deputy general took him ashore to seek treatment. Yang Si was woken up by Fu Wang in the middle of the night. After listening to what he had to say, he analyzed, if that's the case, Yan Lin's condition must be so serious that his life is in danger. There are only small fishing villages in the nearby waters, and there are no decent medical centers, let alone doctors with superb medical skills. Do you mean Yan Lin is very likely to die of illness? Yang Si snorted. If he's alive, I want to see his body. Even if it's just Yan Lin's body, it's more valuable than an ordinary person's. Fu Wang said, if that's the case, then I'll send someone to search the fishing villages. I'm sure we can find Yan Lin. Although the general was very cautious, he still left traces when he dragged the bamboo raft into the reeds. The soldiers followed the clues and located them. The next day, when the fishermen were about to go fishing, a group of strange soldiers came to the village. Did any of you see any strangers last night? Chapter 1571. The fishermen didn't care who had sneaked into their village, as long as they didn't get involved. Out of self-protection, they quickly told the police where Yan Lin and his wife were. At the same time, they were looking forward to it. The arrest had caused such a big commotion. Maybe the two escaped criminals were sentenced to death. If they reported them, they might even be rewarded. The fishing village was small, so the commotion at the entrance would spread to the other end of the village. When the soldiers arrived at the fishing village to question people, Lucky Emperor, who was out drying his medicine, realized that they were here for Yan Lin. After standing still for 3 seconds, he decided to pretend that nothing had happened. He lowered his head and continued drying his medicine. 5 million salted fish stayed up with him for a long night. He told Oh Huang that the medical dispute that happened in his hospital had reached the top of the hot search list at the speed of a rocket. The weird husband, daughter-in-law, and mother-in-law of that family had also been dug out and hung on the wall with their names. It was illegal to search for human flesh, but Lucky Emperor wasn't a saint. He appreciated the salted fish's good intentions. The family had shamelessly accused the hospital of swapping the baby. They refused to admit their mistake and refused to pay for the medical treatment and surgery fees. The hospital didn't want to make a big deal out of it, so Lucky Emperor had to suffer. In order to pay for the surgery, he had used all his savings from his years of work. People who didn't know the truth would think that doctors were so rich that their family would rush to give them red packets whenever they performed a C-section. They didn't know that the hospital had its own rules. There were doctors and family members like that, but they couldn't condemn all doctors. He was on a fixed salary. The family members gave him red packets to make them feel at ease. They thought that the doctor would take extra care of the pregnant woman. He knew this rule. He accepted the red packets to make them feel at ease. He gave them back after the surgery to live up to the oath he made when he was studying medicine. Therefore, he could only count on his salary. Every month, apart from his basic necessities and a fixed deposit of 1,000 yuan, he transferred the rest of the money to his parents. Hearing the salted fish say that the family had been hung on the wall, Lucky Emperor couldn't help but gloat. Fan Ziwu, I saw the news. I thought it was the man and his family that were weird. I didn't expect the woman to be weird too. Poor girl who reincarnated into their family. In order to prove their innocence, the hospital paid for a paternity test. The family said that the hospital and the DNA testing agency were in cahoots with each other and forged the report. In other words, why didn't this family of sticklers kidnap a monkey to the heavens? Tong tong da, discriminating against women is the saddest thing, especially when this woman was a mother. She was so angry that she exploded on the spot. Poor girl, she was born into such a family. What would she do in the future? When the European king told them about his experience, the salted fish automatically imagined him as a weak and helpless mother. When the resourceful salted fish dug up all the information about them, he realized that the mother was also a genius among geniuses. It was said that the mother-in-law planned to stomp the child to death after taking it home, so as not to delay the birth of a second child. The child's mother sadly chose to stand by and watch. In the end, it was the neighbor who realized that something was wrong and saved the child. When the neighbor called the police, he was also threatened by the family. They had seen strange people, but they had never seen such strange people. How did they sneak into the human path from the animal path? Today was the best day in Europe. He was humming a tune as he dried the medicine. The group of soldiers in the distance surrounded her and approached her. The salted fishes were stunned when they saw that Lucky Emperor wasn't going to warn them. Jasmine Xingxiang, no, Mr. Lucky Emperor, aren't you going to wake them up? The European king smiled. I saved them because I'm a doctor. As a doctor, I can't just leave them to die. Yan Lin's injury is almost healed, and the rest is not my job as a doctor. I don't want to get involved in this. Also, if I wake them up, the owner of this body will be beaten into an ally. The host is not at the Jianghu battlefield, so he can't protect the little girl. I'd better not force myself. Although the European king was a salted fish, he was not a man without principles. He liked Yan Lin, but no matter how much he liked his idol, he couldn't sacrifice an innocent life. The best thing to do was to pretend to be deaf and dumb and stay neutral. Yan Lin was still unconscious in the room. The general had been taking care of him all night and was exhausted. He wouldn't wake up anytime soon. A man, who was probably a centurion, approached the European king and said, "Someone said that you took in 2 suspects last night." The European king was about to answer when he saw a few soldiers entering the room to arrest the suspects. The corner of his mouth twitched. They were already in the room. Wasn't it unnecessary to ask him? There were indeed 2 people who came to seek treatment last night. What's wrong? The centurion knew from the villagers that the European king's body was a barefoot doctor in the village, so he didn't blame him. There was a sudden shout from inside the room, followed by the sound of fighting. It didn't take long for it to calm down. Soon, the deputy general's hands were twisted behind his back and tied up. He was escorted out of the room. The European king said, "The one lying in the room is seriously injured and needs to rest. Don't move him. Be careful. Thank you for the reminder." The European king added, "Remember to pay for the treatment of these 2 people and the damage to my room." The centurion couldn't help but laugh. He was a fierce man, and no one was afraid of him. How dare this young doctor bargain with him? "Don't worry, the young lady will be paid." Because Yan Lin was seriously injured, they didn't dare to act rashly. They could only send a message back and hope that the higher-ups would send a skilled military doctor over. In the end, not only the military doctor, but Yang Si also came. Yan Xiaoyang is still alive. He's really lucky. Yang Si sighed. After the examination, the military doctor told him that Yan Lin was still alive because of his luck, but most of the credit should go to the doctor. Judging from the residue in the room, Yan Lin's wound was very bad. His brain might have been burnt out. After the examination, the military doctor found that Yan Lin's body temperature was normal, and his breath was stable. The wound was in good condition, and the stitches were very neat. Most importantly, the stitches were much better than the ones used by the military doctor in the casualty camp. Yang Si couldn't help but look at the European king. The European king was stunned for a moment, but he didn't show any fear. Was he trying to see whose eyes were bigger? Yang Si looked away and whispered to a soldier. The soldier nodded and ran out. He came back after a while. That's strange. This young lady only knows how to treat simple headaches and fevers. How does she know how to do this? Yang Si was suspicious. The European king felt a chill down his spine. Was he going to expose himself? At this time, the centurion mentioned the consultation fee and the renovation of the room. Yang Si signaled to his attendant. The attendant took off the cloth bag hanging on his waist. "This is the consultation fee. The life you saved is very important. It's worth it." Yang Si was a stingy man. The consultation fee he paid was actually the money that Yan Lin gave to the soldiers. There was a finely carved jade pendant, a jade piccolo, and a dozen solid gold balls that weighed about half a kilo. Yang Si walked up to the European king, put one hand on his shoulder, and lowered his head. "Are you a mountain ghost too?" The European king's body stiffened. Yang Si chuckled. In Salted Fish's words, the laughter was very sad. Chapter 1572. What did you say? I don't understand you. Lucky King tried to struggle, but Yang Si didn't say anything. He just smiled meaningfully. Don't smile like that. I'm scared. Lucky King couldn't help but cower. He was a law-abiding citizen of the new era, but Yang Si was a ruthless man who had killed countless people in this chaotic world. Yang Si smiled and asked Lucky King, "Is it fun to see mountain ghosts as cowards?" Before Lucky King could answer, the 5 million viewers in the live broadcast room were the first to protest. What did he mean by mountain ghosts as cowards? Didn't he know that mountain ghost was the nickname of the viewers? Looking down on mountain ghosts was looking down on them. Zibei Fazang, don't be scared, Lucky King. Beat Rongrong up until he calls you daddy. Midnight epilepsy, we can lose our heads and bleed, but we can't lose our reputation as mountain ghosts. We are advanced intellectuals of the new era. How can we be looked down upon by an old-fashioned person? Go up and beat him up until he calls you daddy. I believe you can do it, Lucky King. Lucky King was speechless. He suddenly realized that it wasn't easy to be a streamer. She had made it this far with 5 million viewers holding her back. Awesome. They were just a group of onlookers who didn't mind making things bigger. If he was really fooled by them, Jianghu might even beat his brains out. Television dramas kept saying that scholars were useless, but in fact, scholars in ancient times learned all 6 arts, including horsemanship, archery, and swordsmanship. If you really wanted to do something, you had to be resolute. I have a question. Lucky King saw a few soldiers moving the unconscious Yan Lin onto a stretcher. He was glad that Yan Lin's fever had subsided in the second half of the night, and the general had already dressed him. Otherwise, it would have been embarrassing. What are you going to do with him? As for this, it still depends on my lord. If Yan Lin is willing to surrender, it will save us a lot of effort. Why do you ask? He's my patient after all. It wasn't easy for him to escape from the gates of hell. If you kill him, it will make my previous efforts seem stupid. I'll feel more at ease if I ask. Lucky Emperor's mood was a little heavy. As a doctor, he was used to seeing life and death. He had been honed during his internship in various departments. However, humans were not plants. Even if he was used to seeing some things, he would not be numb to it. The battles between the feudal lords and the internal strife of the chaotic world resulted in countless deaths and injuries. The lives of those who were sacrificed were as worthless as grass. He understood this logically, but he still felt pity and sympathy for them. If these people lived in peaceful times, they would probably have a happier life. There are nobles and lowly people. Yan Xiaoyang's head is worth countless people's heads. Valuable people would not easily lose their lives, and Yan Xiaoyang was clearly such a person. He was far more valuable alive than dead. Unless he no longer has any value, or his death is more valuable, then. Jianghu deliberated and said, according to the master's temperament, as long as Yan Lin is willing to surrender, he will not die. Lucky King could not help but roll his eyes in his heart. Who didn't know that? He also knew that the host was narrow-minded and could not tolerate the slightest bit of betrayal. As long as he was in her camp, the word betrayal was a taboo. If that's the case, I know what to do. Seeing that the soldiers had taken Yan Lin away, Lucky King made up an excuse and said, "Someone disturbed my sleep last night and I couldn't sleep at all. If you don't have any other instructions, I'll go back to my room to rest. Forgive me for not seeing you out." Jianghu did not stop him. He secretly sent someone to keep an eye on Lucky King and report to him if there was anything unusual. According to the previous experience, the so-called mountain ghosts could not stay in the world for too long. After they left, the possessed people would not remember what they had done. Jianghu only needed to observe if there was any change in the person's temperament before and after being possessed by the mountain ghost, so he could tell if the person had left or not. Jianghu's mood was as bright as the spring flowers when he caught Yan Lin, the fish that escaped the net. However, the fish that escaped the net was not happy at all. Yan Lin woke up in the evening. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw a strange beam on the roof. Instinctively, he wanted to jump up, but as soon as he tried, he found that his body was weak and he felt a sharp pain in his shoulder. Yan Lin lay back down weakly, panting slightly. His hands were clenched into fists by his sides. This was definitely not, his lips were pressed into a thin line, and his eyes were filled with complicated emotions. "Sir, you're awake?" At that moment, footsteps were heard from outside. A woman in a dark gray outfit with red trimmings came in with a medical kit. Even a prisoner gets this kind of treatment? Apart from Jianghu, no other feudal lord in the world would use a female military doctor. Yan Lin was even more certain of his situation. Even a prisoner has the right to live until he is dealt with. My lord is not a bloodthirsty person. Moreover, you're different from ordinary people. You're very valuable. Of course, we need to take good care of you. The military doctor was good at talking, but Yan Lin thought that she was talking nonsense. What are you doing? Yan Lin saw that the military doctor was about to untie his belt. He frowned and raised his hand to stop her. "Sir, the wound on your shoulder needs to be taken care of. Wipe it regularly and get rid of the filth. Otherwise, it will fester and turn red again." The military doctor brushed his hand away and took off his shirt, revealing his shoulder. You're a patient now. You should cooperate with the doctors. Don't throw a tantrum. Yan Lin thought back to how he was before he fell ill and kept quiet. Sir, the doctor that General C found for you is very good. The stitches on the wound are excellent. If the healing goes well, the stitches will be removed in 10 days. The military doctor said, the wound will sting later. Please bear with it for a while, sir. Oh, Huang took good care of the wound. Yan Lin showed no signs of infection again. The military doctor only needed to change the dressing regularly. It was very easy. Is this alcohol? The military doctor said, it's hard liquor. It's used to treat wounds. Don't drink it. Yang Si wrote a letter to his lord excitedly. Although he didn't catch Yang Tao, it was still a great victory to catch Yan Lin. Fu Wang led the army to clear the remaining soldiers and officially incorporated Jiangzhou into Jiangpengji's territory. He didn't go after Yang Tao. Instead, he listened to the military counselor's plan. He rested and rested, waiting for the enemy to die. About 10 days later, the military doctor removed the stitches on Yan Lin's shoulder. Young people tended to recover quickly. Other than losing a few pounds, Yan Lin was doing fine. Yang Si asked the military doctor in charge of Yan Lin, how is he? How is his recovery? The military doctor answered honestly. Yan Lin was recovering well. However, the wound was too long. If he moved too much or was too emotional, it might rupture. Yang Si said with regret, is that so? What a pity. The military doctor asked curiously, what a pity? Yang Si said, I have a piece of bad news that will make him fly into a rage after hearing it. One Buddha is born, 2 Buddhas will ascend to heaven. But you said that he hasn't fully recovered yet. If I tell him, the wound will rupture again. Won't that cause more trouble for you? The military doctor was speechless. He had heard that scholars were evil, but he didn't expect them to be this evil. Chapter 1573. What news could Yang Si possibly have that could make Yan Lin so furious that he was about to fly into a rage? The doctor suppressed her curiosity and focused on her work. Every time she changed Yan Lin's bandages, she would show a strange expression. These fellows who were able to become strategists in troubled times, whether it was observation or analysis, were simply not something an ordinary person could imagine. After a few days, Yan Lin finally couldn't help but ask the doctor for more information. What happened outside? The doctor had just changed the bandages and was about to pack up and leave so that Yan Lin could rest. Suddenly hearing this question, she couldn't help but be startled. It wasn't that she was startled, but that she was flattered. She had been taking care of Yan Lin for a long time. Except for the first few words they exchanged on the first day, Yan Lin had been indifferent the rest of the time. Occasionally, he would reply with, oh, or, it doesn't hurt. She couldn't expect him to initiate a conversation. Did the sun rise from the west today? Sir, were you talking to me? The doctor looked at Yan Lin, who was sitting up, and couldn't help but confirm. There are only 2 of us in the room. If I wasn't talking to you, would I be talking to a demon? There was a hint of mockery in his words, but it didn't give off an offensive or rude feeling. The doctor asked, Sir, why do you ask? Yan Lin straightened his clothes and fastened his belt. No one would have guessed that he was a prisoner. He looked more like a respectable young master than a prisoner. From a doctor's point of view, Yan Lin was definitely a patient who was very cooperative. It was also very comfortable to take care of him. With the patient's cooperation and the doctor's efforts, Yan Lin's injuries recovered quickly. He was able to walk a few days ago. Except for the fact that he couldn't do any strenuous exercises or carry heavy objects, he was no different from an ordinary person. Yan Lin said, You've been changing the bandages these days. You look strange. Something must have happened outside. It has something to do with me. The doctor was speechless. Was she really that obvious? But, sir, please don't make things difficult for me. I don't know what happened, and even if I did, I wouldn't tell you. The doctor refused directly. She said, the military camp has its rules. I can't tell outsiders without permission. Please forgive me. Yan Lin remained calm. He was not surprised by the doctor's answer. If the military doctor revealed the news without hesitation, he would be mocking Jiang Pengji for not being strict with her subordinates. If that's the case, please find someone who can talk to you. Yan Lin said in a self-mocking tone, since I'm already a prisoner, should be treated like one. I've been locked up here all day to recover from my injuries. People who don't know what's going on might think that I'm a guest of honor. The military doctor relayed Yan Lin's words to Yang Si. Coincidentally, Feng Zhen was also present. When the two of them heard this, they looked at each other and smiled with ill intentions. The military doctor felt his hair stand on end when he saw this. Yang Si dismissed the military doctor with a few words. I understand. You can go and do your own things. I'll find time to visit him in the evening. The military doctor retreated. Feng Zhen, who was sitting on the side, tapped his palms with his closed golden fan. Are we really going to tell Yan Lin? Yang Si smiled and said, he'll find out sooner or later. The earlier we tell him, the earlier he'll give up. If Yan Xiaoyang wants to commit suicide, I'll prepare something for him. White silk, poisoned wine, a dagger, a long sword. I'll have everything. Even if he dies, he'll die a dignified death. Feng Zhen said, you're gloating. If the two of them weren't on good terms, Feng Zhen would have added, a villain intoxicated by success. Of course, if he said that, Yang Si would probably hold a grudge against him. Who knew when Yang Si would cause trouble for him? Yang Si straightened his chest and said confidently, I'm gloating. Therefore, Yang Si went to see Yan Lin in a gloating mood. It was obvious that Yan Lin wanted to see him, but when Yang Si came, he didn't say a word. Seeing this, Yang Si decided that silence was golden. He wanted to see how long Yan Lin could hold it in. Neither of them spoke first. They just drank their tea in silence. Finally, Yang Si couldn't hold it in anymore. More than half of the tea on the table had gone into his stomach. If the stalemate continued, he wouldn't be able to hold it in anymore. I heard that you wanted to see me. What's the matter? Yang Si spoke first. His tone was very unfriendly. I want to ask about two things, of course. Yan Lin was very straightforward. What do you plan to do with me? How is my lord? These two questions are not difficult to answer. Yang Si didn't deliberately keep Yan Lin in suspense. He said straightforwardly, as for how to deal with you, it's up to my lord to decide. I'm just a small military advisor. I don't have the right to overstep my lord's authority, let alone make decisions for my lord. As for your lord, Yang Tao, he's not in a very good situation. A few days ago, I received a piece of news. It has something to do with you and your lord, Yang Tao. However, the military doctor said that your injury hasn't healed yet. I was afraid that your injury would worsen if you heard about it, so I kept it a secret for you. Yang Si looked like he was doing this for his own good, but Yan Lin didn't buy it. He said indifferently, it doesn't matter. I've recovered from my injury. Tell me what you want. Yang Si suddenly revealed an unfathomable smile, all the malice written on his face. I wonder if you've heard of this saying, those who are not of our race will always have a different heart. Yan Lin said, of course I've heard of it. What do you mean by that? The foreign tribes near Dongqing and Nansheng were the 4 tribes of Nanman and the 3 tribes of the northern borderline. Both of them had been wiped out. How could they still cause trouble? This saying comes from Zhuan. It says, those who are not of our race will always have a different heart. Although Chu is big, those who are not of our race will never be willing to be with us. This tribe is not a tribe of ethnic groups, but a clan. This saying can not only be used for clans and ethnic groups, but it can also be used for countries. Yang Si said with a smile. Yan Lin clenched his fists on his knees. He had a vague guess in his mind. And then? Yang Si said, Yang Tao was born in Dongqing. He treated the old officials of Dongqing very leniently. This has already made the gentry from Nanxing extremely dissatisfied. Now that the battle in Jianghu has failed, Yang Tao has lost more than 100,000 soldiers. Most of these soldiers, except for a few who were recruited from Jianghu, were brought from Nanxing. What will the gentry from Nanxing who sided with Yang Tao think after losing so many soldiers? The conflict between the two has become even more intense. If there is an external force at this time, Yang Tao will be in a very dangerous situation. Yan Lin's eyes turned cold. External force? Yang Si waved his hand and said, Don't look at me like that. My lord is an upright person. He would never do such despicable things. Yan Lin snorted. Even a ghost wouldn't believe Yang Si's words. However, Yan Lin also knew that Jiang Pengji couldn't have done this. And Shui. Yan Lin's heart skipped a beat. He spat out 2 cold words. Chapter 1574. What did Shui do? Yang Si grinned at Yan Lin. Every word he said was full of malice, like poison in his mouth. Yan Lin looked at Yang Si calmly and asked again, What did Shui do? Yang Si smiled. Take a guess. Yan Lin was speechless. If it weren't for the fact that he had yet to recover from his injuries and that he was a prisoner, and that there were more than 10 guards standing outside the door, he really wanted to cross the short table between the two of them and beat Yang Si up. But he didn't know that this was Yang Si's evil side. He knew that the others were as anxious as ants on a hot pan. The more he kept his cool, the more he had to keep them in suspense. Only when they ran out of patience would he give in. Except for the Lord, Jiang Pengji, all of Yang Si's colleagues had tried this trick. In Jiang Pengji's words, Yang Si was asking for trouble. He had the chance to build a good relationship with his colleagues, but he had to make enemies for himself. The 5 million salted fish gave him a nickname, Yang. Don't ask for trouble. See. Yan Lin's heart was in turmoil. His calm, dark eyes were filled with anger, but Yang Si didn't notice it at all. No wonder you brought so many people. You know your place. Yan Lin mocked him. I heard that Yan Lin of Jianghu is a man of both pen and sword. Even though he has been acting like a scholar in recent years, I have heard of his reputation when he was young. I dare not be careless. Yang Si winked mischievously. Yan Lin didn't think it was cute. He only thought it was disgusting. When Yan Lin was young, the situation in Dongqing deteriorated rapidly. Chaos broke out everywhere. Jianghu, which was controlled by the aristocrats, was no exception. Even though Yang Jian and his men had beaten the water bandits to the point that they didn't dare to show their faces, it didn't mean that the water bandits had completely disappeared. There were still many water bandits who raided homes and bullied the villagers. Yang Tao was young and envied the carefree life of the rangers. So he decided to take Yan Lin with him and explore the world. He was a righteous man who liked to stick his nose into things that weren't fair. Every time he did, he would be hunted down. At this point, most people would have thought that the two of them were just Yang Tao killing monsters to attract aggro, and Yan Lin killing them to gain experience. That wasn't true. In the years that they were rangers, most of the pirates were killed by Yan Lin. Yang Tao thought that the water bandits could turn over a new leaf by surrendering, but Yan Lin did not give them a chance to speak. In a group fight, Yan Lin could also fight well. His weapons were a pair of swords. It was said that the master blacksmiths of the present age had spent a great deal of effort to forge them. The sword in the left hand weighed 9 caddies, while the right one weighed 10 caddies. The two swords added together were much heavier than the weapons of ordinary warriors. It was very strenuous to carry them, not to mention using them to kill enemies. When Yang Si heard Fengzhen talk about this gossip, he couldn't believe it at all. Fengzhen said, "Believe it or not, it's up to you. Remember to bring more people with you when you provoke Yan Lin. Otherwise, I'll have to collect your corpse." Therefore, when Yang Si saw Yan Lin, his first reaction was to look at his face. His eyes moved from his shoulders to his arms to his hands to his chest. He was dressed in a scholarly robe, and his long hair was neatly combed and secured with a crown. His facial features were elegant, and his potential was outstanding. From head to toe, there was not a trace of a warrior's aura. Yan Lin sneered, "If you don't want to say it, then don't say it. You can't change anything." Yang Si was speechless. This wasn't going according to the script. Yang Si was a man with a thick skin. If his face was in a story, he would definitely be the villain. He wouldn't survive more than 3 chapters. "Oh. Why don't you tell us what happened so that we can compare? I want to see if the person Feng Zisher admires is worthy of his reputation or not." Yang Si tried to save face for himself and tried to provoke Yan Lin to continue the conversation. Yan Lin said, "And Chui is ambitious. His strategist, Hua Yuan, is also a cunning man with ulterior motives. The epidemic that broke out during the conquest of the 4 tribes of Nanman was most likely part of their plan. They plotted against my lord, Yang Tao, and Lu Shi, trying to profit from the conflict. According to Shui's plan, Lu Shi would have lost many of his elite forces under the joint attack of my lord and the Nie family of Zhongzhou. That way, he could hide in the back and take advantage of the situation to devour the 3 families. Who would have thought that Lu Shi would win in the end? How could Shui sit still? He must have made a move. How many people in the world were watching the 2 battlefields? No one could have imagined that the ending would be like this. Jiang Pengji's family defeated the Yang and Nie families. She still had some troops left. The Yang and Nie families were greatly weakened. Nie Liang died of illness at the front line. More than 200,000 elite troops died at Zhangjiang Pass. Yang Tao lost Jiangzhou because of a mistake and lost more than 100,000 troops. How could Shui sit still in the face of such a situation? If he allowed Jiang Pengji to devour Yang Tao, he would be the next one to die. To save himself, Shui could only change his original plan. He went from behind the scenes to the front and joined the battle. He could either join forces with Yang Tao or take over Yang Tao's territory and troops. If he joined forces with Yang Tao, Shui still needed to support Yang Tao's troops and supplies. Even if he won against Jiang Pengji, he would still have to fight with Yang Tao, who had recovered his strength. If he chose to devour Yang Tao, it was equivalent to nipping his future enemy in the bud. Both options had their pros and cons. On the whole, the benefits of the latter were greater than the former. Yang Tao was half dead now. He did not have many troops left. He was in dire need of supplies and supplies. The Nanxing aristocrats who had supported him had many complaints about him. What about Shui? After the crusade against the 4 factions of Nanman, Shui's power in Nanxing had multiplied. His reputation had also reached its peak. He was born into the aristocrats of Nanxing. His interests were closer to the local aristocrats. In terms of status, he had more political advantages than Yang Tao. According to Yan Lin's speculation, Shui had most likely sent people to persuade the aristocrats who disliked Yang Tao. He would promise them benefits to win them over to his side. The aristocrats also cared about benefits. Yang Tao could not bring them any benefits. It was natural for them to abandon Yang Tao. Yan Lin could totally imagine what would happen to Yang Tao when he returned to the city under Shui's plan. Shui took advantage of the moment when my army was defeated and the people's hearts were wavering. I'm not surprised at all. Yan Lin calmly analyzed the situation Yang Tao was facing. He did not expect Yang Si to still look at him as if he had guessed wrong. Not only that. They're making false accusations. Yan Lin's eyes widened in shock. He stared at Yang Si. What? Yang Si said, "How many aristocrats do you think Shui has instigated?" A small number? The news of Yang Tao's defeat had just spread. More than half of them had already switched sides. The remaining few were just watching silently. Yang Tao is not leading his army back to the Nanxing army. He's courting death. Crack. Yang Xi's sharp ears heard something. He looked down and was shocked to see that Yan Lin had crushed a teacup with his bare hands. Chapter 1575. Yan Lin didn't take Yang Xi's provocation seriously at first, but now he wanted to kill him. Just as he said, if Yang Xi had not placed more than a dozen guards outside the door, he would have pressed Yang Xi down and beaten him up. Is there worse news? Yan Lin was a calm and collected person. He rarely lost his composure, even if Yang Xi's news couldn't be any worse. Yang Xi smiled. Of course there is. I'll tell you. You have to stay calm. Yan Lin was silent for a while. He had asked around about Jiang Pengji's subordinates. Yang Xi was one of Jiang Pengji's most important officials, so he naturally paid attention to him. He just wanted to catch the person who collected the information and give him a good scolding. The information was so inaccurate. In the information, Yang Xi was described as cunning, and unruly. He didn't care about trifles. Except for his poor family background, there was nothing wrong with him. Unfortunately, Yang Xi's reputation didn't live up to his reputation. It was hard to explain. Go ahead. I'm listening. Yan Lin was a man of few words. Yang Xi said, when the two armies fought, Yang Tao sent his wife and son away in advance. As soon as he started, Yan Lin almost lost his composure again. Hidden in his eyes, there seemed to be a storm brewing. When Yang Tao sent his troops to fight against our army, and Shui sent someone to persuade the Nanxing aristocrats. When the news of Yang Tao's defeat spread, the Nanxing aristocrats, who had been hesitant, completely changed sides. To show their loyalty and to threaten Yang Tao, they detained Yang Tao's wife and son, as well as your family members. Yang Xi wasn't being naughty. His deep voice was like a small hammer, hitting Yan Lin's heart. Yan Lin had already crushed the teacup. He had nothing else in his hands, so the table in front of him was damaged. Yang Xi saw with his own eyes that Yan Lin had crushed a corner of the table when he lost control. He suddenly thought of his lord's bronze table. Yan Lin and his lord had a tacit understanding when it came to abusing tables. However, Yan Lin was a normal person. The most he could do was abuse a wooden table. He couldn't break a bronze or iron table. He concluded that his lord was not human. I heard that Yang Tao is a righteous and hot-blooded man. His wife and children are in the enemy's hands and he is in a dilemma. What will he do? Yang Xi said calmly, will he abandon his wife and children, or will he surrender and wait for death? Yan Lin looked calm, but he was not. His emotions were like the ocean under a thunderstorm. The waves rolled and rolled, as if the world was about to be turned upside down. He knew his best friend very well. His wife, children, and younger sister were his lifelines. And Shui had really played a good hand. Yan Lin's chest heaved violently. He was so angry that his eyes were bloodshot. And Shui. How? Yan Lin had always looked down on Shui, and now he was so angry that he wanted to eat him alive. There's no point in holding a grudge against Shui now. You should take care of your health first. Seeing that Yan Lin was so angry, Yang Xi was ready to do a hula dance in his heart. He added fuel to the fire, where there's life, there's hope. And Shui was just a vile person who got what he wanted. My lord doesn't like him. Once she's done with him, and Shui will be next. Yan Lin's eyes were bloodshot. Yang Xi's heart skipped a beat. Humph. What a villain. Yan Lin said this while looking at Yang Xi. Anyone who wasn't deaf could tell that he was insulting both of them at the same time. And Shui was a vile person intoxicated by success, but wasn't this Yang Xi, who was adding fuel to the fire and didn't mind making things worse, the same? That's right. And Duoshi won't be jumping around for long. Yang Xi didn't take it to heart. He didn't care if Yan Lin scolded him. He would have plenty of chances to get back at him when they worked together. Thinking of this, Yang Xi became even more confident, and an enigmatic smile appeared on his lips. Of course, there was another way to describe this, the one who provoked him first was Ibi*tch. Yang Xi's actions would not have lasted more than 3 sentences in a serious story. Yan Lin was speechless. What kind of people did the rumored Duke of Lanting gather under her banner? The worst part was that he had lost to someone like this. Rest well here, Yang Xi said. I got the news a few days ago. I wanted to tell you, but the doctor said that you haven't fully recovered yet. If you get angry or sad, your wound might rupture. For your own good, I delayed the news until today. Yan Lin's answer was, hee hee. Even if he didn't know that, hee hee was the same as buying a watch last year, a cold laugh was a good way to express his mood. Yang Xi wasn't a good guy either. Yan Lin wasn't stupid. He didn't believe a word Yang Xi said. Wait, Yan Lin stopped Yang Xi, who was about to get up and leave. Yang Xi turned to him and smiled. What else? Do you know where my wife and the others are being held? Yan Shuxian was Yang Tao's wife and Yan Lin's sister. Yang Rujia was Yang Tao's sister and Yan Lin's wife. To Yan Lin and Yang Tao, these 2 women were the most important family in the world. They couldn't let anything happen to them. Perhaps, the heroes of this chaotic world did not care about 1 or 2 women. Or perhaps, in their eyes, women were just accessories. Regardless of whether they were mothers, wives, or daughters, for the sake of the great cause, they were all sacrificial victims. Some people would kick their own children out of the carriage at a critical moment. Some people would kill their wives, concubines, and daughters just to motivate the dispirited soldiers. Some people even said that a man would never worry about not having a wife. As long as he was successful, he could choose any woman in the world. Who would want a wife? Most people accepted this reasoning, but not Yang Tao and Yan Lin. They were willing to get involved in this chaotic world to protect their families. If they sacrificed them for something else, wouldn't that be putting the cart before the horse? Yang Xi said, why do you ask? You're a prisoner now. Even if you're strong, you can't do anything. You can't save them. Yan Lin said, if I know, I know. If I don't know, I don't know. Yo, how could a prisoner be so confident? Yang Xi said, I don't know. Yan Lin looked down and said, there's something I need your help with. Yang Xi thought he had heard wrong. Was Yan Lin asking for help? He looked at the sun outside and the guards who were ready for battle. He felt a little nervous. What is it? Yang Xi didn't dare to agree immediately. Instead, he asked tentatively, why don't you tell me? Help me write a letter to the Lord. Tell him not to bow down to Nshui for the sake of the Lord's wife. Yang Xi was speechless. Was Yan Lin an idiot? Yang Xi was on Yang Tao's side. Why would he help him? Besides, if Yang Tao didn't care about his wife, children, sister, and nephew, those 4 people would be dead. Yang Xi thought for a while and asked, tell me what you're going to do. I'll consider if I should help you. Yan Lin said, stall for time and wait for news. Yang Xi was confused. What was the difference between telling him and not telling him? Chapter 1576. I can't make the decision on my own. I'll have to discuss it with someone else before I give you an answer. Yang Xi didn't agree right away, but he didn't reject it either, which meant there was still room for negotiation. After he left, Yan Lin covered the wound on his shoulder. He frowned as if he was enduring something. He unbuttoned his shirt and found that the wound hadn't split open. He couldn't help but sigh. He knew his own body well. When he was a ranger with Yang Tao, he had been injured due to carelessness. It wasn't as serious as this time, and it took him more than 2 months to recover. This time, his injury was serious. He had almost died, but he was still able to come back. In less than 20 days, his wound was almost healed. During this time, his wound didn't fester, and he didn't fall into a coma due to high fever. His medical skills played an important role. When he heard that Jiang Pengji's female doctor sewed people up like clothes, he thought it was scary. But after experiencing it for himself, he felt that the rumors weren't entirely true. This method of treating hand injuries was indeed unique. Not to mention other things, it was much more effective in stopping the bleeding than normal methods. Looking at the wound on his shoulder, Yan Lin thought that when it healed, there would only be a thin scar left. Unlike Zheng Zai's scar, it was long and thick, as if a centipede was crawling on it. I wonder how Ruijia and Ruojia are doing, Yan Lin murmured his wife's name, his heart filled with worry. Yang Tao had sent them away in advance to protect them. Who would have thought that Shui would be so ruthless? The landowning households of Nanxing were also so supercilious and snobbish, betraying them and changing sides just like that. Not only was Yang Tao in danger, but the women and children in the backyard were also involved. Even though Yan Lin was wearing a meter-thick filter, he wasn't blindly cheering for Yang Tao. According to the current situation, Yang Tao had almost no chance of turning the tables. If he wasn't careful, he could die without a grave. And Shui was a despicable person, and Hua Yuan was a lunatic. Even if Yang Tao was willing to surrender for his wife and family, they wouldn't let him go. If Yang Tao gave up his military power, he might still have a chance. If he gave up his military power and submitted to Shui, there would be no turning back. In comparison, Jiang Pengji was much more reliable than Shui. She had never mistreated the widows and orphans of Su Pei and Su Fei, much less tormented them. Even Huang Song, who was at loggerheads with her, was still alive and kicking even though Huang Song didn't have much of a presence now. According to the information sent back by the previous spies, it seemed that someone had seen Huang Song, who was gradually growing horizontally, walking his bird and listening to music. Yan Lin didn't want Yang Tao to end up like Huang Song, but the most important thing right now was to keep Yang Tao and his family alive. Yan Lin would be able to answer to his late lord, Yang Jian, when he arrived at the Yellow Springs in the future. He would be able to live up to Yang Jian's expectations. Of course, Yan Lin didn't completely trust Yang Xi's information. He was only planning for the worst. Yan Lin would not have given up so easily if Yang Tao could have saved the game. On the other side, Yang Xi relayed Yan Lin's words to Fu Wang and the others. Since the Lord was not here, this kind of thing had to be voted by everyone and then let Fu Wang make the decision. If something really happened and the Lord wanted to hold them accountable in the future, none of them would be able to escape. Are you saying that we should help him? Fu Wang was a little uncertain. After all, the two families were at loggerheads more than half a month ago. Now, they were helping Yan Lin to deliver information to Yang Tao. It was strange no matter how he looked at it. Aren't you afraid of Yan Lin's scheme? Fengzhen wasn't sure what Yan Lin's plan was, but he was sure that Yan Lin was trying to save himself and not get himself killed. So what if it's a scheme? Yan Lin is already a prisoner, Yang Tao only has a few remaining soldiers, and the aristocratic families of Nanxing have all defected to the Shui. How can Yang Tao make a comeback? That's true, but... Fu Wang said sadly, I'm afraid of people like you who plot against each other and beat around the bush. Who knows what Yan Lin is thinking? Maybe he's trying to get Yang Tao out of trouble by taking a roundabout way. Fengzhen and Yang Xi were speechless. They didn't remember Fu Wang being tricked. What did he mean by that, I'm an experienced man, you can't fool me, expression? Strategists are human beings too. Don't demonize them, okay? Li Yun, who had been silent for a long time, said, no matter how smart Yan Lin is, he's still a human being. There's a limit to what he can do. How can he help Yang Tao survive while he's in prison? If he had the ability, he wouldn't be our prisoner in the first place. So what if he's delivering a letter for him? What can Yang Tao do now? If Yan Lin is up to no good, we'll kill him. Fu Wang was a little hesitant, probably because he was traumatized by being tricked, but he couldn't resist the opinions of the crowd. Everyone could imagine how Yang Tao felt when he received this letter personally written by his best friend. Yang Tao had been very frustrated for the past 20 days. First, he suffered a great loss at the hands of Fu Wang and the others. With great difficulty, he boarded a ship and returned to his own territory under the cover of his best friend. That very night, he received news that his troops had rebelled. He led the rest of the troops who hadn't rebelled and fought their way out. After a short rest, he received news that his wife, children, sister, and nephew had been seized by the Nanjing aristocrats. The series of blows exhausted Yang Tao. In just a few days, he had lost a lot of weight. His cheeks were thin and his eyes were sunken. He didn't look as energetic as before. On one hand, he was worried about his best friend who was left behind in Jianghu. On the other hand, he was worried about his wife, children, and relatives who had fallen into the hands of the Nanjing rebels. Perhaps it was because he thought about them during the day and dreamed about them at night. In the middle of the night, he would dream about them being bathed in blood. "My lord, there's news." At this moment, Yang Tao was leading more than 20,000 soldiers to defend a certain pass. They used the terrain to their advantage and kept the enemy at bay. The rebels were aware of Yang Tao and the others' predicament. They knew that they lacked food and could not hold out for too long, so they decided to surround them without attacking to buy time. Yang Tao had just woken up from his nightmare when he heard Qian Su's voice. "What news?" Yang Tao was leaning against a big tree with both hands holding his weapon. He looked very alert and relaxed a little when he heard Qian Su's voice. Qian Su sounded a little hesitant. "Look at this handwriting. It's from Xiaoyang." Yang Tao understood why Qian Su was hesitating. According to Yan Lin's situation, he was either dead, captured, or in hiding. If he had the ability to send a letter in such a short time, the only explanation was that Yan Lin had been captured or had surrendered to the enemy. What kind of lord would want their important minister to surrender to the enemy while they were still alive? However, Qian Su had underestimated the relationship between the two. When he heard about Yan Lin, Yang Tao's first reaction was to be happy that his best friend was still alive. It was good that he was alive. Chapter 1577. The handwriting was clear and straight like bamboo. Yang Tao couldn't be more familiar with it. It was Xiaoyang's handwriting. Xiaoyang is still alive. The smile on Yang Tao's face froze halfway when he saw the words written on it. Qian Su asked, "Master, does Xiaoyang want to?" Although Qian Su thought it was unlikely that Yan Lin would persuade Yang Tao to surrender, it seemed to be the only possibility. There's only one sentence in the letter. "Don't bow down to Enshui for the sake of Madam." Yang Tao was confused. He had been depressed for the past 2 days. He was struggling with himself and decided to surrender to Enshui for the sake of his wife and sister. If he could, he would fight to the death too, but it was pointless. He had more than 20,000 soldiers with him, but they were short of supplies and almost all of them were injured. How could they fight against the rebels? If they fought to the death, not only would they lose their lives, but their wives, children, and nephews would also be sacrificed to the enemy. Yang Tao didn't know what to do. Yan Lin wasn't around, so he had to make his own judgment. Qian Su asked, "What does Xiaoyang mean by this? Is he really going to give up on Madam and the others?" Yang Tao shook his head. "Impossible. Xiaoyang isn't that kind of person. He must have his reasons." Qian Su asked, "But, it's possible that this letter was forged by someone working for Lu Shi." Yang Tao shook his head again. "Xiaoyang has a bad habit of writing. If it's a fake, there must be a flaw. Xiaoyang's handwriting could be a fake, but it's a habit. People who don't know him well won't notice it. This letter must have been written by Xiaoyang himself." Qian Su was speechless. He was good friends with Xiaoyang. Why didn't he know that Yan Xiaoyang had a bad habit of writing? Did this mean that they weren't close enough? Then, what does Master plan to do? Yang Tao said, "Trust Xiaoyang, of course. He can't be wrong." Qian Su was speechless. If Yan Lin's filter for Yang Tao was 1 meter thick, then Yang Tao's filter for Yan Lin was probably twice as thick. Perhaps because he was too eager to die, Yang Si would talk to Yan Lin whenever he was free and try to dig out the meaning of the letter from him. Yan Lin was calm at first, but when Yang Si came to him for 7 days in a row and disturbed his rest, he couldn't take it any longer. "I'm a prisoner, but I shouldn't be treated like this. You've just finished your lunch and you're already here. Don't you know that it's easy to feel sleepy in the hot afternoon?" Yang Si pretended to be deaf and mute. He had brought enough men with him anyway, so he was confident that he could use them to commit murder. He was not afraid of Yan Lin's threat. In the end, Yan Lin had no choice but to divulge some information. Yan Shuxian and Yang Ruijia were best friends in their boudoirs due to their elder brothers. Their hobbies were similar as well. Yan and Yan family, Zhang Ti Su said, Ti Fan either. Most of the landowning households had many industries, such as rice shops, wine shops, restaurants, and the more profitable cloth and rouge businesses. Yang Ruijia had a lively temperament, but Yang Jian was stricter with his daughter. In order to get out of the manor and have fun, she and Yan Shuxian began to study the art of disguise in the storybook. He Yan, master. He didn't expect them to know the essence of it. That pile of rouge and powder had been smeared on her face, and her entire face had changed. Of course, the makeup couldn't be compared to the real face, but it was still very deceptive when one's vision was dim. Yang Si couldn't believe it. "How big of a change is that?" Yan Lin said quietly, "My wife once pretended to be you. It was dusk, and even I was almost fooled." Yang Si accepted it for now and said, "You're stalling to give them time to save themselves? The girls from the Yang and Yan families are not weak." Yan Lin said calmly, "The more the Lord values them, the more valuable they will be to the Nanqing rebels, and the easier it will be for them to be watched. Otherwise, they will have a higher chance of escaping." Yang Si said, "If you miscalculated, you can still survive if you take a risk. If you don't do anything, you'll die." Yan Lin said quietly, "The Nanqing rebels will be so easily persuaded by An Shui. Do you think they will be kind to the Lord? Even if the Lord is willing to surrender, they won't let this matter go easily. They can kill them with any excuse. So what if outsiders know that they are the ones who did this? They can't do anything to them." Taking advantage of the enemy's unpreparedness to intercept the captive's family and use them as a threat was despicable. If they could do such a shameless thing, how could they expect them to have basic morals? In troubled times, princes could fight however they wanted, but which shameless person would target innocent women, children? Yan Lin sighed. Even Lu Shi, the Duke of Lanting, wouldn't do such a thing. Yang Si was speechless. Was there any ambiguity in his words? Wasn't it too much to mock his lord right in front of him? Did his lord eat Yan Lin's rice? "Humph, my lord is a gentleman. He wouldn't do something like an animal." As it turned out, Yan Lin knew his sister and his wife very well. Neither of them was a weak girl from the inner house. When they were tricked by the rebels, they realized that something was wrong, but they didn't dare to expose it in case the thugs killed them. Since they still had children to take care of, the rebels didn't separate them. They wouldn't be able to do anything anyway. They tested the rebels and found out that they were quite tolerant of them. As long as they didn't leave, they would satisfy many of their requests. Yan Shu and Yan Lin discussed and immediately came up with an idea. Today they wanted rouge and powder, tomorrow they wanted silk and satin. If they didn't give them, they would make a scene like shrews and scold them. Two mere women, it's really disgusting. I really don't know if Yang Zhengze and Yan Xiaoyang are blind to actually fall for such a vulgar and crude woman. When the matter was brought up, the gentry in charge of them sneered at them in disgust. He waved his hand as if they were beggars and said, "We don't have many days to live anyway. We'll satisfy all their requests. Just make them keep their mouths shut." Thus, the two of them lived a comfortable life in captivity. The servants in charge of them also changed from sympathy to disdain. They didn't know if their husband was dead or alive, but these two heartless women didn't do anything about it. Sometimes, when their child cried for milk, they didn't care. They had seen heartless people, but they had never seen anyone this heartless. What a sin! The maidservants mumbled to themselves. Not only did Yen Shu and Yen Xiaoyang like to play with girls' toys, but they also liked to play with the servants. They often called them over. For example, Yen Shu and Xian were so cold to their children's husband. It was most likely that they already had a man in their heart. They might even have a few gigolos. Taking a step further, it was possible that their children were not their husband's children. After they had said enough and satisfied their addiction to gossip, they reluctantly dispersed. The next day, everyone received a piece of good news that made them rejoice in other people's misfortune. At the same time, it was also the irrefutable evidence of Yen Shu and Xian's indiscretions. Yen Shu and Xian's husband, the feudal Lord Yang Tao, had been forced into a desperate situation by the rebel army. He would rather his wife and children die than surrender. When these maidservants heard this news, they were overjoyed. However, they showed some sympathy on their faces. They also treated Yen Shu and Xian with much neglect. The situation was already over. How long could these two abandoned women jump around? In any case, they didn't have long to live. Yen Shu and Xian discovered that the maidservants, who used to keep an eye on them, were slacking off more and more. With such a drastic change in attitude, they guessed that something had happened on Yang Tao's side. In order to get back at them, the maidservants deliberately revealed the news that Yang Tao had abandoned them. They were gloating and prepared to watch a good show. Just as they expected, these two short-sighted crazy women made a scene and even hit them. Crazy woman. These maidservants had always been proud of serving the aristocratic families. When had they ever seen such wild women? Shu Roa, it's about time, right? Yang Rugia put away her expression and looked at her son, who had lost a lot of weight. The originally fair and chubby boy now looked very pitiful. However, there was nothing they could do about it. After the two children were born, they had been pampered and often cried willfully. She and Yen Shu's plan couldn't go wrong, so they could only harden their hearts and let the two children starve to change their habit of crying. At the same time, it was also to make the maidservants who monitored them relax their vigilance. So far, it seemed that this plan was very effective. The maidservants hated them and also degraded them to dust. They didn't think of their escape plan at all. Why did Yen Shu and Xian torture the maidservants so much? Wasn't it because they wanted to remember their appearance, figure, words and deeds, as well as the scope of their activities and work, so that they could borrow a suitable identity to escape with their children? To ensure that the plan went smoothly, they had considered all the details and were only waiting for the right time to take action. It's about time. We'll find a chance to leave tomorrow and the day after. If we continue to delay, it will be disadvantageous for us. The worse the maidservants treated them, the more they courted death, and their tempers became worse and worse. On the third day, the two officially took action. In order not to arouse suspicion, as soon as Yen Shu and Xian made the plan, they appointed several maidservants to deliver food, and the two targets they had set their eyes on were mixed in. On the day of the action, the two asked their targets to deliver food, and they took the opportunity to knock them unconscious, tie them up, and suffocate them. In order to be in a hurry, Yang Rugia had already put on makeup and disguised clothes. She tried her best to approach the target in terms of figure and height. Because the target maidservant was very fat, she tied her son to her belly. It didn't take long for them to be almost done. Yen Shu disguised herself as a somewhat thin but broad-boned woman, which was more convenient for her to disguise. Her son was hidden in the open food box. Fortunately, the two boys were tired. According to their previous experience, they wouldn't wake up for at least 2 to 4 hours, so they didn't worry. They both knew some vocal skills and could imitate people's voices 90% similar. The two imitated their usual unreasonable behavior in the room. They threw, hit, cried, and scolded, as if they were singing a two-man show. Not long after, the two maidservants were driven out with their faces covered in dirt. The thin woman cursed sharply in a low voice, "Little bitch, when all the men are dead, let's see how arrogant you can be." The fat woman covered her face with her hands, feeling sad. At this time, the sky was already dark. The two were beaten and scolded while delivering food. The maidservant gloated and felt a little sympathy. "Alas, I've never seen such shrews. They're a disgrace to our ancestors. They're angry. You guys should be smart. Don't get close to them and ask for a beating." The fat woman said, "They don't even eat. They sent back all the good dishes. I guess they'll be called again in the middle of the night." The maidservant said, "Then let them starve. Who will deliver food to them in the middle of the night? They're dying anyway, so they don't need to serve them." At this time, the sky was dark. The maidservant and the two old women were some distance apart. Their voices and figures were fine, so she didn't suspect anything. They used their sleeves to cover their foreheads or the side of their faces. They were probably beaten by the two shrews again. The maidservant looked enviously and jealously at the heavy food box in the thin woman's hands. She spat at the backs of the two people who were leaving, "Such precious things, and these two cheap old women ate them. Aren't they afraid of shortening their lives?" Yan Shu and Xian looked calm on the surface, but they were panicking inside. Fortunately, the children were still asleep and didn't have the energy to cry. They sneaked out of the mansion through the side door. Yan Shu and Xian carefully observed them. These two old women usually didn't abide by the rules. They often went out to gamble when they had some money. Most of the people they gambled with were gangsters or servants of the same mansion. Those servants were also shrewd and often gathered together to cheat the two of their money. Therefore, it was normal for the two to not abide by the rules to leave the mansion. They didn't arouse suspicion at all. After the two left the mansion, they found a small alley and changed into other clothes. They planned to sneak out of the city among the common people when the city gate opened at dawn. These two children. Fortunately, they've lost some weight. Otherwise, I'd know they're not from common people. After feeding the children, the two heaved a long sigh of relief. They'd been starving these days. They ate so much all at once. Yang Rugia said, "It's better than dying." After dawn, the two disguised themselves as widows and went out of the city separately. They bought two cheap donkeys to hurry on their way. They swaggered off, and the people who were watching them discovered the two corpses hiding in the corner. Chapter 1579. "Hey, you look good today. Did you sleep well last night?" Early in the morning, the maid who got up early was about to come over to take over. Seeing that her companion looked good, she couldn't help but ask. "I was free last night, so I secretly slept in." The maid who was on duty last night yawned. She still looked tired, but she looked good. It was obvious that she had slept well last night. "Hey. That's strange. Those two crazy women didn't make trouble in the middle of the night? Why didn't I come at such a good time?" The maid who was on duty was very surprised. She was on duty last night, but the crazy woman wanted to eat and drink every now and then. She even wanted them to empty the night buckets, so she couldn't sleep all night. The maid's yawn froze and she said suspiciously, "Yes, why didn't the crazy woman make trouble? Did something happen?" Another maid said harshly, "In my opinion, it would be better if these two scourges were dead." Although they said so, they still went into the room and took a look. They didn't even bother to inform the others, which showed how disdainful they were. They walked around and found no one in the room. They didn't even hear the crying of a baby. They searched the room inside and outside, and the more they looked, the more anxious they became. Suddenly, a hurried and frightened voice came into their ears. They followed the voice and saw a maid falling to the ground in panic. "What happened?" The maid pointed at the box in the corner with trembling fingers and stammered, dead people. Two bodies, one fat and one thin, were broken, tied and stuffed into a narrow box. Their hands and feet were twisted at a strange angle, and their twisted cheeks were facing the crowd. Although the two corpses were bruised, bleeding from their 7 orifices, and their eyeballs were almost popping out of their eye frames, everyone could still recognize them. Were they not the 2 old maids who had delivered food to the crazy woman last night and then sneaked out to fool around? No, it's impossible. The maid who was on duty last night said in panic, impossible. I saw them go out with the food box with my own eyes yesterday. The 2 cleaning maids said a lot to her. Their voices were normal, their figures were normal, and their appearances were normal. They couldn't be dead. Besides, they hadn't come back after they went out. How could they have died in the house? This news quickly reached the ears of the people in charge. However, they didn't say that Yan Shuxian and Xiao Luo had escaped. Instead, they made up a terrifying story about a malicious ghost killing and eating people. With the maidservants on night duty as witnesses, Yan Shu and Xian did not leave the room at all. Instead, it was the old woman who delivered the meal who was beaten to the point of cleaning the room that left and did not return for the whole night. The next day, their corpses were found stuffed into a small box. Nonsense. How could there be spirits and ghosts in this world? Not to mention that it's a ghost that kills people. With Yan Shuxian and the others missing, the person in charge was anxious and angry. Even if Yang Tao did not care about the lives of his wife, children, and sisters, and they were not as important as before, they could still be used as sacrifices for the war. If they killed Yang Tao and Yan Lin's wife and children as a sacrifice to the flag, it would definitely boost the morale of the army and dampen the morale of the enemy. These fools had so many eyes and so many checkpoints, yet they couldn't even keep an eye on the old, weak, women, and children. All of you are trash. Why can't you even look after 2 women and 2 children? The person in charge called the servants and maidservants who were on night duty last night to interrogate them, but the result was unexpected. They all said in unison that they did not see Yan Shuxian and the others, but they saw 2 old women who were cleaning the room go out with their own eyes. The person in charge also hesitated and asked, "Are you sure that the 2 old women went out?" "Yes, it's them. Their voices and appearances are all right." The servant who guarded the door nodded vigorously, "It must be them." Seeing that the servants were so sure, the person in charge was not so sure anymore. Instead, he felt creeped out. It was not that he did not suspect that the 2 old women who were cleaning the room were Yan Shuxian and the little girl, but they were all noble ladies of aristocratic families. Their height, weight, voice, and appearance were very different from the old women. Even if it was dark at that time, the servants should not be so blind and deaf that they could not tell them apart. Unless they knew the art of disguise? After so many twists and turns, it finally came to the level of ghosts and gods. Whether or not it was a ghost that killed people, it could not hide the fact that Yan Shuxian and the others were taken away. The person in charge could only report to the higher authorities. At the same time, the person in charge also took remedial measures. He ordered the city guards to pay attention to the 2 suspicious women who were carrying babies. In this era, there were many widows with babies. It could not be that every one of them was a suspect, right? The person in charge circled a few conditions. For example, the babies were less than 1 year old, the women were very good-looking, had good temperament, and had never done farm work. After a series of conditions, a few suspicious people were detained, but they were not the people they were looking for. Could it be that ghosts and gods are playing tricks? The person in charge tried hard to suppress the fear in his heart. At this time, Yan Shuxian and Yang Ruijia had already ridden the donkey for more than 10 miles with their children. In order to go out and protect themselves, Yang Ruijia disguised herself as a male ranger, and Yan Shuxian disguised herself as an ordinary peasant woman. The 2 of them were like a family of 4 carrying 2 children on their way. This identity allowed them to avoid many dangers. They crossed mountains and ridges all the way to the place where Yang Tao was trapped. Yang Ruijia stepped forward and scolded the soldiers who stopped them, "Get out of the way. The mistress and young master are both here. Who allowed you to be so presumptuous?" The soldiers were stunned. They had shown their identities. Whether they were real or fake, they could not offend them casually. One of them hurriedly reported this to Qian Su. Qian Su was shocked. She grabbed the soldier and asked, "Did they really say that?" The soldier nodded. Qian Su hurried over. Qian Su looked at the strange man and woman. She felt angry that she had been fooled. At this time, Yan Shuxuan's voice returned to normal. "Where is Lang Jun?" Qian Su stared at Yan Shuxian in a daze. This voice was clearly the mistress's, but this appearance was not. Qian Su took a closer look and found that the skin on their cheeks was very unnatural. If she looked at them for too long, she would think that they were wearing a layer of fake skin. When the two of them took off their disguises, Qian Su's expression completely froze. Yan Shuxian said apologetically, "I had to disguise myself like this for the safety of the mother and child." They briefly told Qian Su how they escaped. Qian Su was impressed. At the same time, he was also shocked by Yan Lin's accurate calculation. Yan Lin dared to plot anything, Yang Tao dared to believe anything, and their wives dared to do anything. He couldn't understand the operation of these two families. After almost a month, Yang Tao almost cried when he saw his wife and sister again. Even though he didn't see it with his own eyes, he could imagine how dangerous it was for them to escape. If they were not careful, they would have been smashed to pieces. Now that his family was safe, Yang Tao had no more worries. It was time to think about what to do next. If they fought, it would be like throwing eggs at a rock. They would lose the remaining 20,000 soldiers for nothing. If they surrendered, that was impossible. Otherwise, Yang Tao wouldn't have chosen Yan Lin's suggestion to let his wife take the risk to escape. Who to surrender was a difficult thing to learn. Not only could they save their lives, but they also had to protect Xiaoyang. They couldn't let their soldiers die in vain, and they couldn't let the rebels of Nanqing benefit. Chapter 1580. Yang Tao tossed and turned and made a difficult decision. At the same time, Yang Xi's life was in Yan Lin's hands. His life was hanging by a thread. As the old saying goes, "Don't go overboard in case we meet again." Don't tell me Yan Xiaoyang doesn't understand that. Yang Xi knew that Yan Lin was not easy to deal with, but he still tried to provoke him. Finally, he was pinned to the ground and threatened. The soldiers outside heard the noise and rushed in. They saw Yan Lin pressing the glass shard against Yang Xi's neck. He was surrounded by a murderous aura. The guards knew that Yan Lin was good at martial arts, so they didn't dare to act rashly. For a moment, the two sides were in a stalemate. Yang Xi still dared to provoke Yan Xiaoyang. "Lang Jun of Xiaoyang, please hold your hands steady. If this shard cuts my fragile neck and something bad happens, it won't end well." Compared to the guards, Yang Xi was not worried at all. Instead, he waved his hand at the guards, signaling them to leave. "You really have no eyes. Can't you see that I'm joking around with Lang Jun of Xiaoyang? What are you doing in here?" Yan Lin's breathing was heavy and rapid. His fingers were pale from holding the shard too hard. His wrists were trembling. He had never seen someone as disgusting as Yang Xi. He was disgusting to the extreme. Yan Lin was a good-tempered man, but he had his bottom line, Yang Tao, his wife, and his sister. Yang Xi had crossed the line, which was why Yan Lin was so angry. Yang Jing Rong. Yan Lin didn't put the shard back. His eyes were still filled with murderous intent. "I'm here. I'm not deaf. Keep your voice down. It's not good if the guards outside come in and hurt you." Yang Xi was still smiling, as if he wasn't the one being pinned to the table. "I didn't say anything. Why are you so angry?" Yan Lin was so angry that he laughed. "Are you so sure that my lord will surrender to Lu Shi?" Yan Lin knew that Yang Tao was likely to surrender, but that didn't mean that he would submit. The feudal vassals, who were once on an equal footing, had now become the enemy's dogs. Not to mention whether Jiang Pengji dared to use Yang Tao. Even if she dared to use him, Yang Tao might not be willing. Even if Yang Tao was willing, could they stop outsiders from gossiping? Didn't they know that gossip was a fearful thing? Why did Huang Song stay at home? Most of it was due to political reasons. Huang Song was idle at home, and his former officials no longer had a leader, so the probability of them being disloyal was low. Another reason was self-esteem. In any case, he used to be a feudal lord who wielded great power. Once he lost his power, he was reduced to calling himself a colleague with his old courtiers. The disparity was too great. Even if Yang Tao was open-minded, wouldn't he have a change of heart after hearing too much gossip from others? Rather than letting Yang Tao submit to Jiang Pengji and stay in a position that was neither high nor low for the rest of his life, he would be hurt by the rumors and slanders of the outside world at all times. It was better to completely sever all ties. Regardless of Jiang Pengji's achievements in the future, she had to give Yang Tao the glory and reputation she deserved in order to appease the old officials under Yang Tao. Why did he have to do such a thankless task and end up being suspected and depressed by others? Yang Si grinned and said fearlessly, "To this day, apart from my master, no one can protect the lives of Yang Tao and his family. You are also a smart person, how could you not see through the trick in this? If Yang Tao had the guts to sacrifice everything in his family, you wouldn't have sent that letter. Since he didn't have the determination to give up everything, isn't it natural for Yang Tao to submit to my master?" Yan Lin said, "You said you submitted. Submitting is submitting, and submitting is submitting. They are two different things." Yan Lin could be Jiang Pengji's official, so could Qian Su, but not Yang Tao. Yang Si couldn't help but say, "Are you so angry just because of these two words?" He had almost lost his life. Yan Lin put away the glass shard, but his expression was still gloomy. Yang Si took the opportunity to get up from the table. He couldn't help but touch his neck to make sure there were no scratches. "But really, Yan Xiaoyang, I'm going to be honest with you. Do you really think that Huang Song is good enough?" Although Yang Si was a troublemaker, his admiration for Yan Lin was genuine. He wasn't familiar with Yang Tao, but from the information he gathered, he found him to be a likable person. His lord had lost a lot of energy to resist the attacks from the Nya and Yang families. If he could make use of Yang Tao, he might be able to recruit a group of talented people. At the same time, he could alleviate the shortcomings of the generals. It was killing many birds with one stone. Of course, Yang Si had his own reasons for making Yang Tao submit, because it could push his lord's reputation to the top. If the news got out, the whole world would know that Jiang Pengji had forgiven her former enemies and given them important responsibilities. How bold was that? Of course, the idea was not a spur-of-the-moment idea. Based on Yang Si's observation, Yang Tao and Yan Lin weren't as ambitious as he had imagined. Or rather, their weaknesses meant that they wouldn't be able to reach higher positions. People who were willing to give up their ambitions and submit to Yang Si because of their relatives were destined not to be heroes who could stir up trouble. His lord had their weaknesses. Why would she worry that they would stir up trouble? Yan Lin had seen through Yang Si's wishful thinking, which was why he was so furious. It's not good for Huang Song to be like that. He's lost his heroic spirit, but it's better than trembling in fear and being ordered around by others. Yang Tao didn't pay attention to the details. If he did something wrong and got killed, he wouldn't even know how he died. Yang Si was worried that Yan Lin would explode again, so he simply changed the topic. Elsewhere, Yang Tao was at the end of his rope. There was not much food left in the army, and the rebels were still unwilling to retreat. "There's something I want to discuss with you," Yang Tao said to Qian Su seriously. "It's about the future." Qian Su had seen Yang Tao lose weight in the past 2 days. He looked conflicted. She vaguely guessed something. "No matter what decision you make, my lord, I will follow." Yang Tao found it hard to speak. Everyone had entrusted their lives to him, but he had failed to be a good lord. He had failed to live up to their expectations and loyalty. Qian Su was considerate. Seeing that Yang Tao was struggling to speak, she took the initiative to give him a way out. "My lord, how do you want to settle the 20,000 soldiers in your camp?" Yang Tao said dejectedly, I'm ashamed that I've failed to live up to your loyalty." Qian Su said, "My lord, you don't need to blame yourself. I've done what I could. It's not about anything else." She comforted him, but Yang Tao didn't feel any better. Qian Su asked, "Who did you choose, my lord?" "Lu Shi." Yang Tao said a name that was expected. Chapter 1581. Ever since the Nya family's crisis had subsided, Zhangjiang Pass had calmed down. Jiang Pengji became a hands-off shopkeeper after being busy for a while. She claimed that she was training the new generation. Therefore, she threw a lot of trivial chores to the two little kids, Feng Yi and Sun Lan. Seeing this, Sun Wen was especially distressed. He kept saying, "Lan Lan has lost weight again. Her clothes seem to be a size bigger. Good grandson, this is the chicken soup Grandpa asked someone to make." Jiang Pengji looked at him coldly until her teeth hurt. However, Sun Wen was right in front of her, so she couldn't say it out loud. Salted fish in the streaming room didn't have to worry about that. He quickly uploaded a post titled "Self-Cultivation for Sun Complex" to the top of the trending list. Almost everything Jiang Pengji wanted to complain about had been said by them. Fairy Queen's Crimson, Old Sun Wen is a textbook example of a grandson complex. He can't wait to take his grandson away with him. Jumping Little Apple's Jianghu, sigh, other people's grandfathers never disappoint me. I envy, and hate them. He Tangyi say, Old Sun can take his grandson to the variety show. Where are we going, grandfather? He'll definitely be the most popular. Although he doted on his grandson, Sun Wen had a sense of propriety. He wouldn't interfere with his grandson's training. He watched Sun Lan struggle. In comparison, Feng Yi was much more pitiful. He bowed his head at the table every time and visibly became thinner. Qiguan Rang couldn't stand it anymore. Occasionally, he would stand up and help to prevent the child from ascending at such a young age. Thank you very much. After nearly a year, the last bit of childishness on Feng Yi's face had disappeared. His brows were filled with determination that didn't match his age. His height had grown like a bean sprout. He was now only half a head shorter than Qiguan Rang. One had to know that Qiguan Rang was of mixed blood. His frame was much taller than the average Central Plains man. Feng Yi was still young. There was still room for him to grow taller. He would become taller in the future. Your father said all kinds of nice things and gave me gifts to take care of you. If I don't do something, won't he make a fuss if he finds out? Qiguan Rang had no intention of covering up for Feng Zhen. After all, Feng Yi knew what kind of person his father was. His words were laced with sarcasm and harshness. However, in front of Feng Yi, Qiguan Rang was much gentler. He would even instruct the guards to hunt some wild game for him in the mountains to nourish him. He had the demeanor of a loving father. He said, "Eat more. I've been growing recently. The food in the military camp is still too plain." Feng Yi agreed with a smile. Her gaze landed on the pile of unfinished military affairs on the table, and her head started to hurt. Has my lord's health improved recently? My lord's body is stronger than a bear's. What discomfort. That's just an excuse to be lazy. Qiguan Rang knew what he was trying to test and said, that's just her personality. She can't stand the tedious paperwork. It's not a big deal, so I threw it to you and Sun Lan to practice. Feng Yi asked, does the Lord often do this? Previously, when the war was intense, Feng Yi often saw that Jiang Pengji's camp was brightly lit. No matter how many military affairs he brought in, they would always be cleaned up the next day. Therefore, Jiang Pengji left an impression on Feng Yi that she was diligent in government affairs until recently. Wrongly, she's the Lord. If she had to do everything herself, why would she need so many officials? Qiguan Rang said naturally, after you graduate from the Golden Scale Academy and become an official, you'll most likely need to adapt. The officials have their duties, and the ruler also has the duties of a ruler. The Lord is like a human head. She doesn't need to do everything well, she only needs to know which tasks are done by which people. Being diligent in government affairs was a good thing, but it was a pain in the ass to forcefully intervene in everything when one didn't know anything. In this world, not everyone was as omniscient and omnipotent as the Lord. There were too many fools who thought they were smart and pretended to know when they didn't know anything. There's something. After eating, Feng Yi showed a rare hesitation. I don't know. Qiguan Rang raised his eyebrows and noticed a faint blush on Feng Yi's face. Just say it. In the afternoon, I went to the main tent and saw, the Lord and Mr. Wei seemed to be a little intimate. Qiguan Rang said, don't worry about it. Don't make it public. Feng Yi was shocked. Those two are really, Qiguan Rang said, the man is unmarried and the woman is unmarried. They can do whatever they want. Why are you so surprised? Feng Yi was speechless. The man and the woman were unmarried? Feng Yi silently swallowed her sarcasm when she thought about the Lord and Wei Ci. Qiguan Rang said with a standard Buddhist expression, now that the war is almost over, it's time to look forward to the arrival of a young lord. After a while, he asked the guards to go into the mountains to look for wild animals that could enhance male vigor. Wei Zixiao's body was still a little thin. Feng Yi nodded slowly. Yes, the Lord still has no children. It's quite worrying. She pinched her fingers and counted. In a few months, the Lord would be 24 years old. It was indeed worrying to not have children at this age. At this moment, what was Jiang Pengji, who was supposed to stay in the main tent, doing? She was having a picnic outside and taking an afternoon nap on Wei Ci's lap. The group of salted fish were so envious that they were crying. My lord is in a good mood. Did you encounter a happy occasion? Jiang Pengji stared at his lips for a long time. Wei Ci felt uncomfortable and could not help but think of his impetuousness just now. How can you tell that I'm in a good mood? There's delicious food in front of me, but I can only taste a few mouthfuls. I'm so sad. Jiang Pengji's flirtatious words were inversely proportional to her moral integrity. Even though Wei Ci had been through hundreds of battles, he could not withstand it. Wei Ci's ears turned red as he listened to her teasing words that had a hidden meaning behind it. Don't be like that next time. Today. Wrongly seems, it was fine if Qiguan Rang and the others found out. Wei Ci's skin was thick enough to withstand it, but he was caught red-handed by a junior like Feng Yi. He was ashamed. He knew how vigilant his lord was. She must have sensed Feng Yi's approach, but she did not warn him. Jiang Pengji said, when I was his age, I've watched a lot of movies. How can children nowadays be so pure? Wei Ci was speechless. Although he did not understand, he vaguely felt that something was wrong. What's a lot of bases? Jiang Pengji said, a moving fire avoidance map. 1G is probably a few sets, right? Wei Ci was speechless. Jiang Pengji still thought that he was not embarrassed enough. She said, if there's a chance in the future, I'll bring you to have a look. However, the figures of those people are not even 1% as good as Zixiao's. I don't even know why they like to look. I find it extremely boring. It's just that their postures are a little interesting. Jiang Pengji spent her youth in a training camp for genetic warriors. Some of her comrades who were not too serious bullied her because she was young. They teased her and said that it was interesting. Jiang Pengji actually looked at them all seriously. However, her insight was too terrifying. Those people were like skeletons in her eyes. She could not see what was good about them. Jiang Pengji said again, shall we try it when we return? Wei Ci was speechless. He immediately supported his forehead with one hand, revealing a pair of red ears. My lord, if you continue to be like this, I'll really be angry. He was fierce like a baby. Jiang Pengji smiled and said, okay. I'll change. Don't be angry. As an apology, how about I tell you a piece of good news? The flame that Wei Ci had just ignited was extinguished with a puff. What news? Jiang Pengji said, Yang Tao has surrendered. Wei Ci was pleasantly surprised. When did you receive the news? Jiang Pengji said, just now. I'll probably receive the battle report in another 10 to 20 days. She was a fresh, tender, and juicy European emperor. The person who had transmigrated was Yang Tao's son's wet nurse. Chapter 1582. Ever since the first episode of A Thousand Years in a Dream, the lucky guy in the live streaming room had been through hundreds of battles. What had he not seen? Some of them were men dressed as women, some were women dressed as men, and some were dressed as non-human animals. There was no trace of where they landed or who they were. Some people were luckier and might be able to meet the streamer or the little angel under the streamer's account. They might even be able to bring back some local specialties or souvenirs. Some people were less lucky and would only transmigrate for 12 hours, returning without doing anything. It was precisely because of this unknown and variability that the idle fish especially liked to watch the European emperor's transmigration. They treated it like a wild variety show. There were even video websites that, in order to attract traffic, would edit a 12-hour-long video into a 1-hour variety show, adding various special effects, which actually attracted a lot of views. The lucky emperor would also receive a certain reward. It was a win-win situation. Some people who had nothing better to do would even launch a poll on the internet to guess whether the next European emperor would be a man or a woman, a human or an animal, a woman in a man's clothes, or a man in a woman's clothes, or a normal gender. In Jiang Pengji's opinion, it was really boring. Time flew by, and a brand new European king was about to appear. The salted fishes were especially excited every time this day came, and they used the speed of 20 years of being single to snatch a spot. Only by grabbing a seat in the live broadcast room would one be qualified to compete for the 1 in 5 million chance to become the real chosen one. Tudu Faccio, ha ha ha, I got a spot and punch in. What time does Dream of a Millennium start today? Upstairs is a devil, you animals, did you build a commercial building in the live broadcast room? Zizai Xiaoyao, sigh, I also want to buy a house in the streamer's studio, but the price is too high. I can't afford it. Zizai Gezi, I'm waiting for the lucky draw. I went to Jintai Temple in Zhuhai to burn incense and pray to Buddha. While the salted fish were chattering and making a ruckus, Jiang Pengji brazenly took advantage of Wei Ci. She avoided the camera in the streaming room in a petty manner and used herself to block their line of sight. The salted fish could only see Wei Ci being hugged and kissed by her, but they could not see the details. She was openly giving out dog food. At first, the salted fishes would rise up in revolt, but after a while, they became numb to it. Some of the naughty salted fish would even watch the live stream while eating white rice. Together with the dog food distributed by the streamer, it was a delightful sight. Congratulations to the audience, Free Legs, for winning a slot in the X phase of the Dream of a Thousand Years event. As soon as the results came out, the newly minted European king said to his teammates, I'm going to transmigrate, you guys take care of yourselves. He cruelly unplugged his desktop computer and rolled around on the bed with his phone in his hand. However, he soon lost his smile. Who am I? Where am I? What am I doing? He was holding a soft, milky bun in his arms, and the brain was grabbing the front of his shirt with its two little hands, and burying its little head in his chest. Every time the child tugged, the European emperor would tremble. He was frozen on the spot, not knowing what to do. 5 million salted fish happily peeked through the small window to see the European emperor. They were shocked, and the bullet screen was filled with exclamation marks, question marks, and ellipses. Zizai Xiaoyao, colon. Guoguang apple, oh my god. Spectacle circle, pft, sexy European king, feeding milk online? This bullet screen expressed everyone's thoughts. Very soon, the salted fish, whose hand speed was off the charts, became a trending topic. Cat demon king, cough cough, European emperor, be careful. Don't throw the child out of fear. This child might be the child of this body. In fact, when the European emperor first came over, he was so scared that he wanted to throw the child out. However, this body had been holding the child for too long. His hands were numb, and his knees were stiff, so he could not put his action into practice. Yin's error and Yang's mistake saved his life. The European Emperor, Ing Qa. The chubby child spat out the thing in his mouth after a while, and groped for the other side. He did not know that the wet nurse who was hugging him had changed her core. Naturally, she did not understand his actions. He was anxious because he could not get any milk. The European Emperor panicked even more. Fortunately, the system kindly reminded him, so he knew to continue feeding the little ancestor in his arms to the other side. After tasting the food, the little fellow closed his eyes in satisfaction and continued. The European Emperor, who was at a loss, suddenly thought of a very serious problem. When he changed sides just now, did he see anything that he should not have seen in the live streaming room? Although it was not his own body, it was still very shameful to be exposed in front of so many people. Fortunately, the system warmly reminded him that there was a real-time code that would protect the privacy of the experiencer. The European Emperor then heaved a sigh of relief. What sigh of relief? He was about to suffocate. Ouch! The European Emperor did not have much experience, so he could not tell how old the child in his arms was. However, he knew that the child had small teeth that were like glutinous rice. When he was feeding, he accidentally bit a weak spot. It was so painful that tears almost came out of his eyes. However, he did not know the identity of this body, so he did not dare to act rashly, let alone beat the child up. The child smacked his lips in satisfaction when the food on both sides was swept clean. The European Emperor was a first-year student. He was gentle, and occasionally indulged in RPG games. He did not have any bad habits. As for children, he did not like them, but he did not hate them either. Especially babies who did not cry or make a fuss, he could not harden his heart. He just felt a little wronged. It was not easy for him to transmigrate, but now he was being used as a milk bottle. The salted fish guided him from afar. The European Emperor clumsily picked up the child vertically and let the child lie on his shoulder. He patted the child's back until the child burped with a milky fragrance. According to the salted fish, it was said that this was to prevent the child from choking on milk after eating too much. What's your name? The European Emperor observed his surroundings while feeding. He found that the decorations around him did not look like an ordinary house, and the clothes the body was wearing were not bad either. Sai, who are you to me? The European Emperor asked the child again. When he was about to ask the third question, the system notified him that someone was approaching. The European Emperor immediately shut his mouth. Little Langjun, are you full? The woman who came in was a servant in her early 20s. Her hair was combed into a bun. Yes. The European Emperor answered according to the system's instructions. The less he said, the more mistakes he would make. The servant took the European Emperor and the child to another room. On the way, they passed by a courtyard, and the European Emperor's sharp ears heard a familiar voice. Yang Si? Yen Lin? Yang Tao? How did the three of them get together? For a moment, all kinds of conspiracy theories surfaced in his mind. Could it be that the thick-browed, big-eyed boy, Yang Si, betrayed the revolution, betrayed the host? He was so absorbed in his thoughts that the child in his arms felt uncomfortable. He suddenly burst into tears, which startled the people in the room. The European Emperor held the child helplessly and blinked innocently at the servant who led the way. Chapter 1583. The servant woman scolded, "Aren't you going to coax the little Langjun? If you disturb the big shots in the house, how many lives do you have to pay?" This servant woman was not very old. To be honest, she was only 1 or 2 years older than the European Emperor. She was about the same as a junior or senior. However, a junior or senior was only a young girl in society, but the servant woman in front of him was the inner courtyard manager who assisted Yan Shuxian in taking care of dozens of people in the backyard. In modern times, she could be regarded as the general manager of a medium-sized company. Her aura was very oppressive. The European emperor secretly swallowed his grievances and coaxed the crying little boy. He almost whispered in a pleading tone, "Little ancestor, please don't cry, okay? If you cry again, I will cry for you. I didn't pay attention to strangle you just now." The servant woman was a few steps away from the European emperor. The European emperor was begging baby in his arms with a voice that was almost in his mouth, so the servant woman did not hear what he said. Seeing that the little Lang Jun had not stopped crying, the servant woman's face fell. She was about to say something when she heard footsteps coming from the house. When the servant woman saw that it was Yang Tao, she immediately saluted and greeted him. The European emperor reacted a few beats slower. He saluted the boy in his arms and looked down to see a pair of feet wearing snow-white socks and wooden clogs. As he was guessing who this person was, the boy in his arms stopped crying and stretched out his hands to the person. Most of his body leaned toward the person. The European emperor was so scared that he hugged the boy tightly. The person seemed to notice his panic and worry and said gently, "It's okay. Let me hold him for a while." The little Bei was particularly well behaved in Yang Tao's arms. His watery black grape-like eyes were covered with some water vapor, looking pitiful and cute. I have never seen such a clever little Lang Jun. Did he cry to attract your attention because he knew that Lord Jingzhou was in the house? The European emperor twisted his sleeves anxiously, for fear that others would find out that the child was crying because he was strangling him. This was not a society ruled by law. The servants had no human rights. If they offended the master, they would be beaten to death. At this time, the European emperor heard the sound of nature. Xiao Rongrong, the handsome Yang Si, who he usually ridiculed for having no moral integrity, actually stood up for him and cleverly covered up the fault of the European emperor. At the same time, he praised the child. Even though Huang had yet to enter society and the workplace, he knew that Yang Si was someone who knew how to talk. As a father, which father didn't like to hear such praises? Little Bei did not know how to express himself, and he was at an age where he was full of energy and forgetful. When he saw his father, whom he liked very much, he forgot everything else and just pestered him to play. Seeing that the child was fine, Yang Tao naturally did not notice and believed Yang Si's words of praise. "My son likes to pester people when he's young. I've let envoy Yang Si a joke." Yang Tao took a few breaths of his son's milk fragrance and revealed a bright and beautiful smile. Even Yang Si, an outsider, could feel that Yang Tao really liked this son. Yang Si chuckled to himself. This Duke of Jianghu was indeed a peculiar person. He was exceptionally family-oriented and loved his own flesh and blood. "Where are you going?" Yang Tao casually asked. Huang still hung his head down and did not dare to look up. He silently looked at the bullet screen and judged the reactions of Yang Tao and the others. On such occasions, the female servant at the side would naturally answer, and it was not his turn to interrupt. Of course, the most important thing was that he did not know what to say. QAQ aggrieved. In fact, it was nothing much. It was just that Madame Yan Shuxian missed her son and wanted to see if the new wet nurse was to her liking. Hearing that it was a trivial matter in the inner residence, Yang Tao kissed his son, handed Bei back to Huang, and said, "Go, don't let Madame wait for too long." Huang had been following the live stream for many years. When he was free, he liked to browse the forum of the Empress and look at the posts that were sorted out by big hands. Since the start of the Dream of 1,000 Years event, these posts had been pinned at the top all year round. Everyone who had the ambition to become Huang would look at the contents of these posts. Perhaps one day they would be lucky enough to transmigrate. In order not to expose themselves, they still had to understand the basics. Upon hearing Yang Tao's words, Huang replied in a low voice. Other than looking a little shy, there was nothing strange about him. However, after Huang left with the servant woman, Yang Tao found that Yang Si still had a thoughtful look on his face as he stared at the back of the wet nurse. Yang Tao thought about the rumors about this person and his eyebrows twitched. Before Yang Si and Feng settled down, they were both prodigal sons. However, Feng was unrestrained in the open, while Yang Si was coquettish in the dark. Their reputations to the outside world were also different. Everyone knew how unrestrained Feng was, but they didn't pay much attention to Yang Si, who was more low-key. Of course, as a former opponent, it was impossible for Yang Tao not to know the information of the main members of the enemy. This Yang Si also didn't seem to be a very reliable person. Yang Tao thought for a while and tried to ask, Messenger Yang, do you know that wet nurse? Yang Si withdrew his gaze and said, I don't know her, but she is a little. Yang Tao was shocked and asked, what is a little? Could it be that there was a problem with the identity of this wet nurse? If that was the case, he definitely couldn't let this woman get close to his son. Who knew what she was thinking? Yang Si saw Yang Tao's grave expression and knew that the other party had misunderstood. He couldn't help but cough lightly to smooth things over. This person's side profile is somewhat similar to my wife's, and I was dazed when I saw her. Speaking of which, my wife also gave birth last year. I haven't seen her for a long time, and the child can recognize people now. Yang Tao didn't know that Yang Si was actually married. However, Yang Si was already over 30 years old, so it was normal for him to have a wife and a daughter. When he looked at the unfamiliar wet nurse just now, he was also touched by the scene and thought of his wife and daughter at home. Yang Tao expressed that he could understand. Yang Tao was easy to fool, but Yang Tao's external brain, Yan Lin, was not so easy to fool. First of all, he had never heard that Yang Si had a family. The so-called wife and daughter were most likely not legally married, and it was still a question whether they existed. Second, Yang Si's eyes didn't show attachment to his wife and daughter at all. It was more like he had seen something interesting and his curiosity was aroused. His mouth was full of nonsense, and it was unknown how many of his words were true. When Yang Tao heard that Yang Si's daughter was the same age as his son, he joked, a son and a daughter? Maybe we can be in-laws in the future. Logically speaking, Yang Si's status wasn't high enough to be Yang Tao's in-laws. Even if Yang Tao was a fallen feudal lord and Yang Si was an important official in Jiang Pengji's camp, the current concept of bloodline meant that no matter how high Yang Si climbed, his children would still be at a disadvantage. Yang Si didn't take Yang Tao's suggestion seriously, but he also felt that it was appropriate and had a good impression of Yang Tao. Yan Lin, who was standing at the side, quietly poured a bucket of cold water on him. People of the same surname don't marry. Yang Si couldn't bear to see Yan Lin gloating, so his mouth moved faster than his brain and said, it doesn't matter. My daughter will follow my wife's surname. As soon as he said that, Yang Si wanted to slap himself. Chapter 1584. Yan Lin and Yang Tao, on the other hand, were shocked. Children, follow my mother's surname? Unheard of. Even if the husband and wife divorced, there was no reason for the child to follow the mother's surname. Could it be that Yang Si's wife and daughter were fabricated? Yang Tao was a little confused. He secretly asked his lost friend with his eyes, how should he continue this topic? After a while, Yang Si said, many years ago, my lord agreed to the decision of the soldiers in the female battalion to have an independent household. Although it's not perfect, it's possible for one household to have two households. My wife's background is special, so it's unlikely that she will be registered under my household register. It's fine if the child takes her surname. Hearing this, Yang Tao and Yan Lin became curious about Yang Si's wife, who had never been heard of before. According to Yang Si's analysis, Yang Si's wife was most likely a member of the women's camp. Based on Yan Lin's understanding of Yang Si, this man looked casual, but he was actually very demanding. His wife couldn't be an ordinary soldier either. She might be someone with a military rank or a real power. In this chaotic world, it was not easy for men or women to reach this stage. This was because the ways of the world were harsher and stricter to women. If a woman wanted to reach the same height, she had to put in more effort and toil than a man. From this, it could be seen how outstanding that woman was. She was good in every aspect, but unfortunately, she was blind. Why was it snatched away by Yang Si? Yan Lin was hesitant, but Yang Tao was much more casual. He asked directly, "If that's the case, I'm curious. What is your wife's name?" Yang Si hesitated for a moment. After all, his relationship with Colonel Jiang was tacitly acknowledged by everyone, but it had not been made public yet. "My wife's surname is Jiang." Martial artists did not have so many elaborate formalities, but Yang Si was a scholar. It was impossible for him to casually tell his wife's maiden name to a man outside. Yan Lin and Yang Tao thought of a girl at the same time. Yang Tao was shocked. Could it be Jiang Nongqin, Field Officer Jiang? Yang Si said, "It's my wife." The number of warriors under Jiang Pengji's command wasn't small, but it wasn't large either. Apart from a few who had the ability to command troops independently, most of them came from the wilderness. Their shortcomings were very obvious. They could fight battles, but they couldn't lead troops. As the only female general who held military power, Jiang Nongqin was naturally the center of attention. According to the information obtained by the spies, this female general had always been unmarried. When did she have a husband and a daughter? Yang Tao looked at Yang Si with some eagerness in his eyes. If the child betrothal before was a joke, then this time, it was a little serious. Anyway, Yang Si had agreed just now. Yang Tao only needed to go with the flow. Yang Si was miserable. He tried to refuse, but Yan Lin interrupted him. Yang Si was not in the mood to think about the wet nurse. Why was he thinking about this wet nurse? Of course, it was not because Yang Si had taken a fancy to her, but because of something else. To be precise, Yang Si had encountered a total of 2 mountain ghosts. Although these mountain ghosts didn't have any ill intentions, there was a saying that went, "Those who are not of our race are bound to have different intentions." Yang Si couldn't guarantee that these mountain ghosts wouldn't cause trouble at the critical moment. He carefully recalled the details of his brief interaction with Mountain Ghost, trying to find a common characteristic between the two. Because of his strong memory, recalling the details was like dragging the mouse to watch a video frame by frame, not missing a single detail. He didn't make any progress until he saw the wet nurse today. His heart was filled with good fortune and a flash of inspiration appeared in his mind. He found a clue. Do they have anything in common? Yes. Whether it was the first mountain ghost of the fisherwoman or the second mountain ghost of the physician, Yang Si had close contact with them. The first mountain ghost, a fisherwoman, sat on the deck in Tot Chi Kwang shipbuilding. From his perspective, Yang Si could see her neck. It was faintly green, but he didn't take it seriously at the time. That was also the first time. How could Yang Si know that mountain ghosts would appear so frequently? The discovery of the second mountain ghost of the physician was purely an accident. Yang Si found that the other party's behavior was unusual. She wasn't from the women's camp, but she had more advanced and skilled trauma suturing skills than the women's camp medics. The soldiers sent out to investigate also got some clues from the fishermen. They all agreed that this doctor's medical skills were ordinary and there had never been a precedent of suturing. Thinking of the mountain ghost, Yang Si lied to the other party. As expected, the person gave himself away. Yang Si was very close at that time. With his height advantage, he did see some green lines on the back of the other party's neck. After a few hours, the mountain ghost left and the doctor returned to normal. From this, it could be seen that the mountain ghost stayed for a limited time, which confirmed the first mountain ghost story. When it was the turn of the third mountain ghost, the other party kept her head down the entire time. Her collar was relatively short, revealing a section of green lines. When Yang Si saw this, he suddenly thought of the 2 mountain ghosts from before. If this was the mark of the mountain ghost's possession, didn't it mean that there was something wrong with the wet nurse? Thinking of this, Yang Si secretly tested Yang Tao. From Yang Tao, he learned that Yan Shuxian, who was in charge of the inner residence, valued the child's new wet nurse very much. She didn't hire anyone with a bad smell, an ugly appearance, a lazy personality, a loose mouth, or a damaged skin. Among them, tattoos belonged to the category of damaged skin. In other words, this tattoo should have been obtained after the successful application. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for her to be hired. Although Yang Si didn't learn from the rangers to get tattoos to show off, he also knew that after the tattoo was done, the skin would feel uncomfortable for a while and it would take time to recuperate. This wet nurse had only been in office for a day or two. There was no time for the tattoo to return to normal. All kinds of inferences suggested that the wet nurse was most likely a mountain ghost. Only a wild spirit would have the ability to do something that didn't make sense to this extent. After coming to this conclusion, Yang Si wanted to meet the mountain ghost of the wet nurse. Not knowing that he was being watched by Yang Si, Lucky Emperor shuddered secretly. When Yan Shuxian met Lucky Emperor, she saw that he was a little shy but very dutiful. Her son also liked to drink his milk, so she allowed him to stay. Although Lucky Emperor didn't know how to chat, he could copy the flirtatious words from the Empress's forum. This amused Yan Shuxian, who had been depressed recently. The 5 million salted fishes were secretly jealous. They thought that Lucky Emperor would have a good show to watch when he was breastfeeding. They didn't expect him to turn around and flirt with a girl. Not only was he flirting with a girl, but the girl was actually Yang Tao's wife, Yan Lin's biological sister. This made the fans of both families grit their teeth in jealousy. Soon, Lucky Emperor was out of luck. Why? Because Yang Si found an excuse to see him. The salted fishes were stunned when they heard this. Could it be that the theme of today's live broadcast wasn't sexy Lucky Emperor breastfeeding, but scumbag Yang Si cheating on a woman online? A grown man suddenly wanted to see a married woman who was crouching in the inner courtyard breastfeeding. Put together, it made people's imagination run wild. Lucky Emperor didn't think it was messy enough. He asked anxiously, "If Master Yang wants to sleep with me, do you think I should comply or not?" The salted fishes were speechless. Chapter 1585. Although the European emperor was flirtatious, when he met Yang Si, he couldn't say anything. "Nice to meet you, messenger." The European emperor bowed to Yang Si as soon as he came up. He was trembling with fear and looked pitiful, which made Yang Si think that he was scary. "Do you know why I called you here?" Yang Si's eyes were as cold as water. He didn't deliberately use his aura to suppress the European emperor, but the European emperor felt terrified. It was like playing with a mobile phone by the window in high school. The teacher was standing outside the window and looking at the back of the European emperor's head with a cold face. Unspoken rules? The European emperor was also scared and very nervous. When he realized what he had said, he quickly changed his words. "I didn't mean that. I mean, I don't know why you called me here." Yang Si listened to the European emperor's lame speech with a cold face. He seamlessly switched between servant, and servant. The European emperor was too nervous. As an otaku who had just graduated from high school and entered college for less than 2 months, he blushed when talking to a girl. He dared to say all kinds of flirtatious words through the internet, but when it came to face, he couldn't even say a word. He was timid, weak, and pitiful. Yang Si also noticed this. He simply got up and walked to the European emperor. The European emperor was afraid to look at Yang Si. He lowered his head slightly and stared at Yang Si's socks. He thought to himself, "There's no foot odor." Yang Si didn't know the European emperor's flirtatious words. In front of the 5 million people, he touched the European emperor's neck with his 2 fingertips. He curled his fingers slightly, and there was indeed a green line on the back of the European emperor's neck. Before he could react, the European emperor jumped up like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. The bullet screen in the streaming room was in an uproar. Jiang Pengji, who was far away in Zhangjiang Pass, also stared at Yang Si. What are you doing?" The European emperor grabbed his clothes with one hand and covered the back of his neck with the other. His cheeks were flushed, and his eyes were slightly red. He was obviously dressed like a married woman, but he revealed the shyness of a virgin girl. He cried out involuntarily, "How dare you sleep with me?" Yang Si looked at his fingers and was stunned for a moment. Then, he immediately burst out laughing. "I don't even know if you're a man or a woman. Did I sleep with you?" Yang Si was not a fool. From the tone and context in which the European emperor mentioned the unspoken rules twice, he roughly guessed what the unspoken rules meant. Humph, it was most likely something between a man and a woman. Even though he had settled down now, Yang Si was still a veteran when he was young. What kind of beauty had he not seen before? No matter how bad his taste was, he wouldn't fall for a married woman, right? Tell me honestly, why did you sneak into Yang Tao's residence? The more a person liked to laugh and act coquettishly, the more pressure they would give others when they were serious. Looking at Yang Si, Europe King was so scared that he almost cried, especially when Yang Si's dagger was still on his neck. What are you doing? I didn't provoke you. Yang Si sneered and spat out two words, which made the European emperor's body stiffen. Mountain ghost. Lucky Emperor was lying on the ground, and Yang Si's dagger was placed across his neck. The back of his neck was facing Yang Si, and the green tattoo was particularly eye-catching. This should be the sign of a mountain ghost possessing a mortal's body, right? Yang Si's fingers brushed past the skin, and there was no protrusion. It was as if it was not stabbed by an external force, but more like it was coming out from the inside. I don't care how you mountain ghosts run around. I owe a debt of gratitude to your kind. I won't do anything to you because of this debt of gratitude. However, you have to tell me your purpose in coming to Yang Tao's residence. Don't you know that Yang Tao wants to surrender to my master? If something happens now, how many twists and turns will there be? Both the European emperor and the salted fish in the live broadcast room were shocked by this turn of events. Sure enough, transmigration was not an easy job. These ancient people were more cunning than the other. Compared to them, Yang Si was more like a mountain spirit. Driven by a strong desire to live, the European emperor stammered, "I really don't have any bad intentions. I'm still confused. I'm a man, and I haven't even found a girlfriend yet, but I'm being used as a milk bottle by a child. I'm really at a disadvantage. I'm not a nanny." If he had known this earlier, he would have sat in front of the computer and continued to play games. It was better to nurse his teammates than to be breastfed by a little kid. Yang Si was speechless. Letting go of the dagger, the European emperor looked like a good woman who had been forced. Yang Si felt a headache coming on. I've met a total of 3 mountain ghosts. The first one knows shipbuilding skills, and the second one is excellent at suturing wounds. What do you know? In the face of such a blatant question, the European emperor's fragile heart shattered. He knelt down with a thud, looking as if he had suffered a great blow. I admit that they're all big shots, but I'm just a rookie. However, I'm good at nursing people, and I'm proficient at it. If you were my teammate, I could help you ascend to the 12th stage. Yang Si was speechless. The 12th stage? He tried his best to analyze the European emperor's words and frowned. I'm just an ordinary person. I can't cultivate and ascend. He could also hear that there were differences in the mountain ghosts. The first 2 were most likely accomplished in a certain aspect, but the one in front of him. Perhaps even Yang Tao's son could bully him. Thinking of this, Yang Si felt that it was boring and uninteresting. However, the mountain ghost in front of him was so innocent and harmless. Perhaps he could get some information out of him? Thinking of this, Yang Si's stomach began to rumble with black water. Didn't they say that mountain ghosts rarely appear in the world? Why are you guys possessing mortals one after another? The European emperor broke out in a cold sweat. He bit his lower lip and did not know how to answer. If he answered incorrectly, he might cause trouble to the people who came after him. Yang Si was too shrewd, and it was difficult for him to lie. One was deliberately trying to get information out of him, and the other was guilty and afraid. Yang Si trying to get information out of him was easier than eating and drinking. Not long after, Yang Si found out from the other party that the mountain ghosts did not appear in groups. They would appear once every 7 days and randomly possess a living creature. There are tens of millions of living people in the world, and there are countless other living creatures. Why did I encounter 3 mountain ghosts in a few months? The European emperor said with a bitter face, maybe it's because you're too lucky. The European emperor who encountered Yang Si was really unlucky, especially himself. He was simply unlucky. Yang Si asked, when did you possess this person? The European emperor looked at the time and said, 2 hours ago. He would possess a person for 7 days, and each possession would last for 12 hours. Yang Si silently noted down the time and pattern. It's not my place to interfere if you want to travel the world. However, I have a piece of advice that you should keep in mind. Yang Si's expression turned cold. What advice? Yang Si said, don't do anything that will hurt my master or hinder my master's hegemony. The European emperor was silent for a moment. He never expected that little Rongrong would have the attributes of a loyal dog. The anchor was really a woman that made people envious and jealous. Yang Si sneered and said, the tattoos on the back of your necks can't be concealed if you possess them, right? The European emperor looked confused and did not understand what Yang Si was talking about. Yang Si was speechless. Chapter 1586. Perhaps it was because the onlookers saw the game more clearly than the players. The salted fish would not be able to react to Yang Si's aura in person, but when they watched the live broadcast through the screen, their reaction speed was very fast. This was probably due to the bombardment of palace dramas. How scary the women in the palace dramas were. It was as if every word and every look carried a deep meaning. At this time, every salted fish was like a detective with an IQ of more than 200, using a magnifying glass to dig out every hidden meaning. Of course, the salted fish would not be as nervous as the lucky emperor, so their brains worked quickly and they quickly figured out what he meant. Yudiandu, well, did I hear it wrong? Is Boss Yang Si threatening us? Tudu Feichio, no, you didn't hear it wrong. He is threatening us, and it's a ridiculous threat. We are all the streamers' sweet little cotton-padded jackets. How could we do anything to hinder the streamers' hegemony? Xiao Sisi's worried look is so cute. Guangchang Wuwang, that's not the point. The point is that the streamer saw Yang Si secretly expressing his loyalty. This boss will have a rich future in the future. The most important thing is that he has taken a big step toward marrying Jiang Xiaowei. If Jiang Xiaowei knew about this, her favorability would be off the charts. As salted fish who liked any popular couple, they once supported Jiang Peng and GX Jiang Nongqin's Frost Jiang. However, the streamer still chose Wei Ci, who was more popular. This made many lesbian fans of the cute couple wring their hands. Even though Jiang Nongqin and Yang Si had become a couple in the past 2 years, and they even got pregnant and gave birth to a daughter, the group of lesbian fans did not climb over the wall. Instead, they imagined a sadomasochistic love story. At the same time, they were even more happy to see Yang Si's recent situation of being a father and still being single. To return a beauty, one had to first increase the favorability of the lord, rival in love. It was a sour feeling. Looking at the salted fish's bullet screen, the originally nervous and afraid Oh Huang could not hold it in anymore. He burst out laughing. Yang Si's eyes narrowed and he asked, "What are you laughing at?" "Oh no." The lucky emperor's cheeks, which had been flushed with great difficulty, turned pale again. He said, "I just think you are thinking too much. I have no ill intentions." Whether the lucky emperor was swearing or something else, Yang Si would not easily believe him. He remained vigilant. Those who are not of the same race will surely have different intentions. Mountain Ghost was not a human, so how could he believe everything? After asking what he needed to ask, Yang Si let the European emperor leave. He didn't expect the European emperor to hesitate. He wanted to say something, but he didn't. Yang Si asked, is there anything else? If there was nothing else, he would leave quickly. He still had to think of an excuse and write a letter to inform his lord of what had happened today. The European emperor blushed and said shyly, "Can you give me an autograph?" Yang Si laughed involuntarily. "You mountain ghosts like to collect signatures from mortals so much?" It seemed like the first fisherwoman mountain ghost he met also asked Yang Si and the others for an autograph before she left, saying that she would take it back as a souvenir. "I think you have a bright future ahead of you. Maybe you'll be a famous person in the history books. Your handwriting is worth collecting." Even though there was a lucky star born every 7 days, there were only a few people who had the chance to get close to Jiang Pengji and the others. Their autographs and personal accessories were all sold at high prices. The European emperor was not greedy. If he asked Yang Si for an expensive item, it was unlikely that Yang Si would agree. It was the same as a stranger asking for a mobile phone. However, if it was just an autograph, the European emperor felt that there was still hope. The lousy RPG game that he was obsessed with was too reliant on configuration. Unfortunately, he was poor and had no money to replace the expensive game notebook for that lousy game. If he had Yang Si's autograph and auctioned it online, he would have the money for the game notebook. He would have a lot of fun playing games in the future. In order to achieve his goal, the European emperor even said good things against his will and flattered Yang Si. As a person with backbone, if it wasn't for the small amount of money to buy the game notebook, he wouldn't have given in to Yang Si. Yang Si said with a smile, "That sounds nice. Since it sounds nice, sign a few more autographs for me." He took advantage of the situation and said, "Getting rich depends on you, big boobs." Yang Si was speechless. He suddenly felt that his previous conspiracy theories and worries were all for nothing. Why was he worried that the mountain ghosts might hinder his lord's hegemony and threaten his lord's safety? If the mountain ghosts were so naive and easy to fool, Yang Si would be worried about this race. Would they really die because of their naivety? Seeing this, the European emperor said, "Why do I feel that your expression and eyes seem to be despising me?" Yang Si denied it 3 times. "No, I didn't. Don't talk nonsense." The European emperor happily took Yang Si's autograph and his well wishes and left, leaving Yang Si alone in a dilemma. He drew the tattoo on Empress O's neck with a good stroke and frowned slightly. Even though he was experienced and knowledgeable, he couldn't figure out the origin or meaning of the lines. "Forget it. Since one appears every 7 days, I'll just be careful in the future." If the mountain ghosts could hide the tattoo on the back of their neck, they wouldn't have exposed themselves in 3 consecutive times. If the mountain ghosts were really a threat, Yang Si could also use the pattern of their appearance and the symbol on the back of their neck to guard against them. The appearance of the European emperor was just an interlude. Yang Tao's surrender was the big deal. Using the European emperor's perspective, Jiang Pengji roughly pieced together what happened over there. The Nie family isn't a threat for the time being. Let them fight amongst themselves. But Shui's side is too restless and needs to be taught a lesson. Jiang Pengji said to Wei Ci, "Yang Tao's surrender has to be done by me personally. It's inconvenient for Jing Rong and the rest, and many things aren't easy to settle." Even though Yang Tao had surrendered, he was once a feudal lord and he had taken the initiative to surrender. It was different from being defeated and captured. It wasn't appropriate for Yang Si and the rest to show up, so they could only settle him down and wait for Jiang Pengji to come over and deal with it. A portion of the troops were left at Zhangjiang Pass to prevent the Nie family from making any changes. The rest could be pulled to Zhangzhou and try to take down Nanxing before the Nie family recovered. Once Nanxing was taken down, Zhongzhou would no longer be a concern. To prevent any accidents, Jiang Pengji specially asked Qiguan Rang, Sun Wen, and the rest to stay. If the opportunity to attack Zhongzhou was ripe, they didn't need Jiang Pengji's consent. This was considered a complete delegation of power. Qiguan Rang said, "The situation in Nanxing is unclear. Why don't you bring more people over, my lord? We can be at ease." Jiang Pengji asked, "Wenjing, do you have any suggestions?" Qi Guanrang glanced in Wei Si's direction and said, Zixiao is cautious and thoughtful. He has also gone deep into Nansheng and has a good understanding of the situation there. My lord, you can bring him over. In addition, General Bai Ning is from Nansheng. Maybe he can be of use. Bai Ning was just an extra. Qi Guanrang's goal was still Wei Si. His lord was too self-disciplined. As a subject, he was also worried. He could only find an opportunity to get the two of them together. Maybe one day, the goddess of children would appear and send the young lord over? Why would Wei Si stay at Zhangjiang Pass? It wasn't that he had to be there, but the young lord really had to be there. Jiang Pengji silently glanced at Qi Guanrang. Qi Guanrang silently looked back at her without a hint of fear. Feeling helpless, she said in private, we're still at war. Be serious. Chapter 1587. I've lived for more than 70 years, but this is the first time I've been hastened. I feel like I have an additional mother-in-law. She needed time to prepare for the journey to Jianghu. As the lord, Jiang Pengji did not need to be busy. Naturally, someone would arrange everything for her. She had nothing to do and told Wei Si about Qi Guanrang hastening his pregnancy. The latter's expression was like an overturned pallet. Jiang Pengji thought he was puzzled about the 70-plus years. She smiled faintly and explained, the world I lived in my previous life is very different from this place. Ordinary people can easily live to 150 or 200 years old. Those who are strong and talented can even break through the limit and live to 300 or 400 years. As for me, although I have this potential, I'll most likely die in the line of duty because of my job. Don't think that I'm very old at 40 years old in my previous life. According to the average lifespan of this world, I'm considered to have just reached adulthood. I'm still young. Jiang Pengji emphasized the word young. She did not want others to say that she was an old cow that ate young grass. Moreover, Wei Si's age in his previous life was not as young as Jiang Pengji's. Wei Si laughed and said, no, my lord, you've misunderstood. I'm just curious, where did the term mother-in-law come from? If the lord compared Qi Guanrang to a mother-in-law, wouldn't Wei Si have an additional mother for no reason? Jiang Pengji said matter-of-factly, have you ever seen a father-in-law urge his son-in-law to have an heir as soon as possible? Usually, it was the mother-in-law or mother-in-law who hastened the pregnancy. Wei Si held his forehead speechlessly. Was that the main point? Wasn't the main point why Wenzheng was a mother-in-law and not at the mother-in-law? Wei Si felt relieved after thinking about it. His lord could not be the one who married, and he did not want to have a mother-in-law like Qi Guanrang. No matter which one it was, it sounded like a nightmare. Wenzheng is also confused because of his concern. Wei Si looked like he understood. As someone who had been through it, he had been anxious about the young lord's affairs in his previous life. He never expected the emperor to take a fancy to him. He inexplicably felt like he had shot himself in the foot. Wei Si's mind was wandering. Jiang Pengji's words pulled him back to the human world. Jiang Pengji smiled and said, a few days ago, he sent people into the mountains to look for wild animals that nourish yin and strengthen yang. Do you feel that your diet has changed? Upon hearing this, Wei Si's face immediately turned a little livid. Seeing his cute reaction, Jiang Pengji couldn't help but laugh out loud. Wenzheng, you're really... It's fine if you don't help Si, but why are you mocking me? Wei Si held back for a long time but could not find the right words. Jiang Pengji, on the other hand, smiled happily and leaned half of her body toward him. To prevent Jiang Pengji from falling to the ground, Wei Si stretched out his hands to support her. From an outsider's point of view, the two of them were in an intimate position. A third person could not intervene. How is this a mockery? Jiang Pengji cupped his cheeks with both hands and took a deep breath. Wei Si turned his head with difficulty to avoid her and said with difficulty, one must not have sex in broad daylight. Even though the two of them had a relationship that was not supposed to have, Wei Ci was still conservative in his bones. He was very conflicted about his lord's frequent intimacy. She was clearly very happy in her heart, but when she sobered up, she felt ashamed. From time to time, this would happen. Wei Ci even suspected that he was the femme fatale, in the eyes of others, seducing the originally wise and mighty monarch into indulging in his beauty. Even the Empress in her previous life was not so passionate and open. She was especially reserved in her feelings and was even as indifferent as water. Jiang Pengji glanced at the clothes of the two of them. They had not taken off a single piece. This can be considered as sex in broad daylight? She smiled and said, Zixiao's standards for sex in broad daylight are really low. Wei Ci coughed lightly. Seeing that Jiang Pengji's eyes seemed to have a strange look, he understood and changed the topic with a strong desire to survive. Speaking of Wenjing's matter, I'm afraid it's not his idea alone. Jiang Pengji could not help but laugh, but she did not expose Wei Ci's lame actions. Young lord, what will come will come. No matter what, we have to wait until Nansheng and Zhongzhou are conquered. Only when the world is stable can I have the energy to consider the matter of the heir. Due to the limitations of technology in this era, Jiang Pengji could not enjoy the benefits of waiting for a baby to be born after an operation. She had to give birth to the heir herself. Women used their bodies to give birth to life. There were many inconveniences in life. She had to make thorough preparations before considering this. Anyway, our bodies are not bad and we don't have bad habits. Maybe we can have a child in one go. Wei Ci agreed with this. In the previous life, Her Highness Jiang Yan was born not long after their first time. At that time, their physical conditions were not as good as in this life. From the time Her Majesty discovered that she was pregnant to the time she gave birth, everything went smoothly. Her Highness Jiang Yan was born in only 2 hours. However, there was an unforeseen event when she gave birth to Wei Kong. The delivery room was mixed with something evil. It was difficult to give birth to that unfilial son after a day and a night. When talking about children, Wei Ci was easily distracted. My lord is in good health. You can have the young lord at any time. On the other hand, Wenjing and the others have to wait. Jiang Pengji said, what is obtained too easily is often not cherished. Let them look forward to it so much that their necks grow, and they will know how to cherish it. Wei Ci thought of the previous life and could not help but laugh. My lord, aren't you afraid that the young lord will be spoiled? Do you think that's possible? They don't even spoil their own children. How can they spoil the young lord? Jiang Pengji had seen the children of the next generation. None of them were crooked, especially Fengjin's family. If the upper beam is not straight, the lower beam will be straight. That's true. They are already deeply grateful to have a young lord. They look forward to becoming dragons and phoenixes. How would they dare to spoil others? In the previous life, Jiang Yan was also highly anticipated by everyone. Even though she was a girl, no one said anything about it. She was raised according to the standards of the crown prince in all aspects. Even when Her Majesty was pregnant with another child, apart from most of the disloyal fellows, Qiguan Rang and a few others were the few officials who did not propose to abolish the crown prince, Jiang Yan, and cultivate a male heir again. Their political stance was also biased towards Jiang Yan. Of course, this was also related to Crown Prince Zhang's premature death at birth. If Fu Shou had not faked his death and hidden, Her Majesty and Her Highness Jiang Yan would have been in danger. It would not have been easy for Jiang Yan to win against her brother. You're distracted again. This is the 3rd time. Jiang Pengji gently pinched his cheeks. Recently, she had been feeding him delicious food. Why did his cheeks not grow fat? Wei Ci said, I can't help but think of Fu Shou. Jiang Pengji said, why do you think of him? She had seen 2 children in Wei Ci's spiritual world. The child named Wei Tsong was quite likable. He looked like Wei Ci. Wei Ci said, as a father, I didn't do my duty to teach him and caused him to go astray. I'm ashamed of Her Majesty's trust. Wei Zixiao, I've tolerated it for a long time. Jiang Pengji's face darkened when she heard that. She pinched his cheeks with both hands and pretended to be angry. Don't you think it's too much to mention another woman in front of me? Look at the color of my head. You can even breed horses on my head. Chapter 1588. Are you being jealous of yourself, my lord? Wei Ci asked with some uncertainty, but the corners of his lips could not help but curl up. He was already in his 70s in both his previous lives, but his mentality now was like that of a reckless boy who had just awakened to love. If his sweetheart was willing to pay more attention to him and look at him more, he could not help but be overjoyed. Jiang Pengji admitted it openly and said, "So what if I am? Even if Her Majesty, in your previous life was me, I don't have that memory. To me, she is another person. You always feel sad when you mention her. Isn't it normal for me to be jealous?" She was not like the man in front of her who said one thing but meant another. She had seen through Wei Ci's temperament. He said whatever he wanted to say. She did not expect his brain to guess the feelings she wanted to express. She admitted that she was jealous. So what? Wei Ci held back his laughter and said, "My lord and I are almost 150 years old. We are an old couple. Let's not talk about this." Jiang Pengji raised her eyebrows and pouted. "Tell me honestly, in your heart, who is more important, me or your majesty?" Wei Ci was speechless. His strong desire to live told him that this was a terrible question that would kill him. Even though Wei Ci was usually eloquent, he did not dare to answer rashly for fear of stepping on a landmine. In a dilemma, he could only seek help from the culprit who looked at him with a faint smile. "How do you think I should answer, my lord?" Jiang Pengji said, "Lust." "What? Lust?" Jiang Pengji gestured a peace sign. There are no lovers' conflicts that can't be settled with a kiss. If there are, then kiss both of us. Wei Ci was speechless. Even though Wei Ci had seen all kinds of storms, he still could not withstand his lord's flirtatious tricks from time to time. Sometimes he wondered if he was blind. Her Majesty and his lord were clearly the same person. The former was cold and reserved. She would occasionally laugh heartily and was rarely affectionate. The latter seemed to dig out all her feelings, making him unable to resist. Even so, he had to accept it even if he could not resist it. After all, she was the person he looked up to, chased after, and loved for 2 lifetimes. Their relationship grew steadily. Jiang Pengji was not a petty person. She often shared her feelings with others. For example, if Wei Ci sent her supper in the middle of the night, she would turn on a live broadcast to abuse the single men in the middle of the night. Why did he say that he was abusing the single dogs? Which couple with a nightlife would fight for a spot in the live broadcast room at this time? Only single dogs would starve to play games, play on their phones, and watch live streams. Adults who were no longer single were all enjoying life. Therefore, during this period of time, the streaming room was filled with the wails and cries of the salted fish. It was as lively as the new year. Only Jiang Pengji was happy. Her happiness was built on the pain of 5 million salted fish, so it was precious to savor it. Fortunately, these painful days did not last for too long. Tudu Feiqiu, thank you, Boss Qiguan. I've finally completed the prerequisites for the expedition. Otherwise, the host would have gone crazy. Little luck, thank you too. The host seems to have taken the wrong medicine these days. She's been showing off her love life. The whole world knows that she's no longer single. Have a dream is great, wrong. It's not the whole world. It's 2 dimensions. 12 billion people know that she's no longer single. Jiang Pengji changed into her military uniform again and leaped onto the horse's back. Let's go. The towering mountains near Zhangjiang Pass slowly descended into the horizon behind her. Qiguan rang and the others stood on the city wall and watched the army leave. They were bathed in the afterglow of the setting sun. Their bodies seemed to be surrounded by a golden glow. If we can take down Nanxing this time, the world will be within reach. Qiguan Rang's voice was not loud, but it had a certain power, as if he was talking about the future. Sun Wen corrected him. It's not, the world will be within reach. It's clearly, the golden age will be within reach. Yes, the golden age will be within reach. Qiguan Rang revealed a rare smile. We have to work hard too. We don't want to be a burden to our Lord. Sun Wen raised his eyebrows. He did not think that Qiguan Rang's words were said casually. They were obviously filled with ambition. What do you plan to do? Qiguan Rang replied, of course, I want to make Zhongzhou even more chaotic. I want them to be tired of fighting amongst themselves. If possible, I can even coordinate with them from the inside. Speaking of sowing discord, Qiguan Rang was also an expert. He was no weaker than Sun Wen when he provoked the 3 tribes of the northern borderline. From what you're saying, you plan to secretly support the forces in Zhongzhou? The situation in Zhongzhou was already chaotic enough, but in the eyes of the two, it was still lacking. They still needed to fan the flames. If we personally send troops, it will easily backfire and cause the aristocratic families of Zhongzhou to unite against the external threat. Qiguan Rang understood this point very well. Once there was a common enemy and a greater hatred, former enemies could also temporarily become allies and unite against the external threat. This was not what Qiguan Rang wanted to see. It's better to secretly support one person and use the other party's hand to plant informants and instigate more intense internal strife. The fiercer the internal strife in Zhongzhou, the greater Qiguan Rang's profits would be. Qiguan Rang was not worried that no one would be willing to cooperate with him. Standing in front of sufficiently tempting benefits, not many people could resist, let alone those who only had ambition but no intelligence to match it. Qiguan Rang asked Sun Wen, Zidao, what do you think? Sun Wen smiled and said, very good. He had settled a portion of the enmity with the Nie family, but it was far from enough. To uproot the Nie family, as the Lord, Jiang Pengji still had to reach a higher position. If she could take Zhongzhou into her own hands, what would the Nie family amount to? Sun Wen naturally agreed with Qiguan Rang's suggestion. Putting aside their plans for the time being, Jiang Pengji began her boring march. Zhanjiang Pass was not very far from Zhangzhou. Riding horses at full speed, coupled with the waterway, one could usually reach it in half a month or 20 days. However, Jiang Pengji brought along 50,000 troops and horses. Naturally, the speed of the army could not be compared to the speed of the messenger. Overall, it was much slower. On the 10th day of the march, the scouts of the army stopped a messenger. After interrogating him, they found out that the messenger was coming for Jiang Pengji. Jiang Pengji took off her thick military uniform and changed into a black robe with arrow sleeves. The hem of the robe was shortened by her. It barely reached her knees. Paired with long pants, it was more convenient to move around. The audience in the streaming room had taught her to make the robe. They had recommended it to her, saying that they wanted to see how she looked like in the robe. Jiang Pengji had people make the robe according to the words given by the audience. It was indeed very comfortable to wear and looked heroic and free. No one had seen this style of clothing before. It was a little foreign, but Jiang Pengji was the Lord. Even if they had not seen it before, no one dared to say anything. She had ridden for the whole day. At that moment, she was sitting in the tent, washing her hands and preparing to eat. Messenger? Jiang Pengji said, let him in. Is there any change at the front line in Zhangzhou? Unbeknownst to them, Jiang Pengji had hit the nail on the head. The messenger entered the tent and half knelt to report. It was just a few words, but everyone in the tent was so shocked that they could not react. Wei Ci, who was helping Jiang Pengji set the bowls and chopsticks, trembled. A pair of chopsticks fell on the table with a clang. You're tuning in to the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.